we're on?
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right.
Really is.
Right, so let's go ahead and get this meeting started. It's currently 7:03 p.m. So I'm gonna call this meeting to order. We have a couple of people who are running late. Mary Romanek, unfortunately, and Carol Furlow, unfortunately, are both running late, but they will be here this evening, so they are okay. Let's go ahead and start with the introductions. Monica or Nancy, who wants to go first?
Nancy Radkowitz, principal. Jennifer Shaul, teacherette.
Victoria McCarthy, parent rep.
Regina Chadwick, parent rep and secretary.
Ellie Landrew, parent rep and GC chair.
Kevin Cusswander, friend of ed.
Kathleen Luttrell, Board of Trustees, Vice President, and MVM rep.
Monica Talley, teacher rep.
Great. Moving on to approving the agenda. I motion that we approve tonight's agenda. Can I get a second? Great. Does anybody have anything that they want to add or change or amend to it? Does it all look?
The building's
Brown's going down.
contact needs to be changed to Brian.
Yes.
So,
So on that same note, I just want to apologize to Brian West that I didn't update his information, and it will be accurate for next month's agenda. I've already corrected it in next month's agenda. And a very warm welcome to Brian, and thank you for stepping up into the role as building and grounds chair. So thank you. Kathleen?
I want to add an item in, I guess it should go under old business, but
Okay.
we should approve some funds to purchase a washer and dryer.
Especially.
I already took them off.
Marissa, just to put you on the spot for a hot second, where would we pull those funds from?
Probably MVM school fund with MMCI, but I can't tell you the category yet or anything because I don't have my reports up yet.
Okay.
I don't know if it needs to be added since it's on the committee reports, but as far as the strategic plan goes, how would you like to add our discussion about that, if anybody has anything to add? Or did I miss that it's on there?
It's on there under
It's
old
on there.
business for
Okay.
B.
All right.
No, please
Oh,
don't
there it is,
apologize.
right here.
It's okay.
I didn't see
And I don't always see things, so, that's why it's always good to have some space for making corrections when needed, so thank you. All right, so I motion that we approve the agenda as corrected. Great, thank you. All in favor? Wonderful, thank you. All right, let's move on to community comments. And I believe we have at least one. Yes.
Where would you like me to?
You can have a seat right there.
Sit by
Nancy.
Nancy?
You brought copies? Do you have any?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
So after the meeting that we had with the GC and the staff, we felt empowered to propose a policy of our own. And so that's what this is. I wanted to just present it to you. Some of the staff has put it together. I'll just read it so that everyone there can see it, and then we can talk if you want to ask us. Members of the Board of Trustees and the MVM Governing Council may not serve as a parent or student advocate for anyone other than themselves or members of their family during their term of office or service, sorry. This policy will prevent members of the school leadership from having to choose between acting as a school leader or acting as a parent. It's impossible to be seen just as a parent while also holding a leadership position on either the Board of Trustees or the MVM Governing Council. Board members and council members will always be recognized by the office they serve first and their role as a parent.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, this is from all staff leadership, just for my notes. Sorry.
Staff leadership approved it, so yes.
Okay.
All right, moving on to GC members' reports. Nancy?
Hi. Thank you all for the kind emails that I got while I was gone. It's really good to be back. If you know anyone who needs back surgery, talk to me, because this guy walks on water. Really good. But anyway, first of all, I wanted to share a newsletter that went out while I was on vacation, getting my back operated on. And this is from Miss Zoe's class, but I wanted you all to see the quality of some of the things that are happening in our Opera classrooms. Some of the parents went this week to Miss Jennifer's room where they did
Wax museum.
a wax museum. I missed it, of course, because I had all of these other meetings, but I heard it was incredible. So just wanted to pass this around and show you sort of what they send out to the parents each month. Also wanted to let you know that report card date has been changed to Thursday. So for us, that's good because that's Thursday folders. And so you will receive your child's report card. Also, second graders who took the cognitive abilities test will get the results. The parents will get the results of that test. And we have gotten them back. Along those lines, I will be doing a parent training on February 12th, Tuesday, at 6 p.m. from 6 to 7 about the COGAT. And this is for second grade parents. So if you have any that have questions about the assessment, we'll go through and talk about the value added from knowing learning strengths from our children. We are the only charter school in the county who administered this. The entire county administered it to every second grader in the county. But we kind of got a little, you know how we get ahead of things, and got permission to do it. So I'm excited to have that and have it in place. The other thing, I know you'll be looking at hiring, and I don't know where you are as far as media, but I wanted to show you that for less than $1,000, you could get a 3D printer for our school. And some of these wonderful presentations that students are doing could be even more wonderful. We would have to have a full-time media person to help run that and set it up, but I wanted to share that with you. It's kind of the new way. If you think Chromebooks are pretty fancy, wait till you see a 3D printer. So that's really cool. What else? Let's see what else I have here. I think that's all. We are doing global scholar testing for 2nd, 5th, and 8th. We've completed 8th grade. They've done reading and math. We worked on 5th. Today we'll be doing 2nd on Wednesday and Thursday, or Thursday and Friday, 2 days. Then the other grades we'll do at the end of the next quarter. With my being out, it kind of fell apart. We didn't have it scheduled, and so we're kind of doing it in a hurry up and get all the data in. So to let you know that we do have MISA testing coming up. MISA is the Maryland Science Testing that 5th and 8th graders take, and that will happen on March 11th through the 15th. And then PARC testing begins on the 23rd of April. And we hope to have it done by May 17th, all of the PARC testing. PARC testing is done by 3rd through 8th grade, and it's both math and English. So just kind of keep you posted. Now, the last meeting that I was at, I was supposed to report on our school improvement plan. So I made copies for all of you, and then we didn't get to it, and I put them somewhere, and I can't find them. So I went in today to print them to share it with you. And I have to apologize. The printer told me I had too many cookies open or something strange. So I don't have them, but I will get them to you. I have to talk to Mark. I know he has a copy. Call and find out why I can't open it. But anyway, I wanted to let you know that one of the things that we put into the school improvement plan this year was talking about the FCPS survey. Since I've been here, and this is my 5th year now, we have averaged between 25 and 28 parents completing our parent survey for FCPS. The good news is it might mean that they're happy and so they feel like they don't have to. But the bad news is that this year we were rated 5 stars. Did everybody hear that? 5 stars. I
5
got
out of 5.
We were the only charter school in the county to get 5 stars. So you all heard that, right? That's pretty powerful. So we would like to hear from all of our parents, not just those 25 who fill it out every year. What I'm doing to try to move that along, because it's all anonymous, I can't know anything until it's all done and recorded, and it'll be spring before they give us those results. So what I'm doing is I have sent home an extra sheet on your survey form, and it went home with your youngest student or only student, right? Okay. And on the front of it, it says, check this out. And there's a check mark. And I would just ask that you would cut off that bottom check mark and have your child put it in this box in the front lobby. I won't know who you are. You don't have to put your name on. It doesn't matter who it is. Hey, we were creative. I'm not that way. Like, I got it done. It says, yes, I completed the FCPS parent survey. Please place your check mark here. And I'm just going to be counting them every week and reporting it. We have until February 22nd to get those done. So please help me with this. I know you all will complete yours, but everybody you know, say, have you taken time to complete the parent survey? It helps us design our school improvement plan. It helps the teachers get feedback. It helps your leader get feedback. It's a pretty powerful piece of information. And 25 out of 190 parents, this isn't very good. Now, I would like to be able to offer it in our front lobby, but our front lobby isn't big enough. So we have also included in that letter that you got this week in Thursday folders, I included an invitation to come at 3 o'clock and go to our computer lab and do your survey here. And then you can just tear that check mark off, put it in the box, pick up your kids at 3:30 and out the door you go. So we're trying to help people remember. We'll probably all have kids walking through car lines, reminding people, have you done your parent survey? We will do the survey with the kids. It's 3rd grade through 8th grade. We'll take care of that. The other issue is my staff. This year I have almost 50 staff members, and I've averaged around 14 staff. Again, maybe they're just really happy, or maybe they just don't want to do it. I don't know. It's all anonymous. So they are doing the same thing, but they're putting it in a mailbox in our office, just a check mark, and we're up to 14, which is what we average every year. So I'm literally going after the lunch lady, the custodians, everybody. You did it?
I did it.
Yay! So we're just trying to get everybody to fill this out, so we'll have some good data to share with you in the spring. So anything you can do to promote that, we would love it. And that is on our school improvement plan, which a copy of. Apologize. That's it. That's my report.
I do have a question. Do you want me to put anything in next month's agenda for you to kind of come back and talk about scores and data?
I won't know any of that yet. You mean from,
When would you
from
like me?
Global Scholar?
Yeah,
Yes.
from Global Scholar
Yes.
and from the
From the COGAT?
No, Yeah. maybe?
No, not
You don't have it?
really. What, let me just stop and explain the COGAT. It is a test that talks about the levels, how you learn.
Mhm.
So it's really just lets people know if you're a strong visual learner, if you're a strong mathematical thinker, if you're strong verbally. And really, that's all it's going to do. We're
Okay.
not going to correlate it. They do use it to identify gifted kids in most counties. It correlates with IQ, but we don't get that information. So really, it's interesting. Now, I will say, and Gail, maybe you can jump in here with me. I don't think the things on the test are things that we've really covered with kids before.
Not really.
So I'm going to go over that a little bit with the parents and give them kind of examples of what might have been on that nonverbal test. For instance, taking a piece of paper and folding it 4 times and punching a hole and then opening it, and what's the pattern? And it's pretty sophisticated. So what I've been doing is just sharing with the lower L team some examples of things they could do with next year's 2nd graders now. They just use for fun activities. So the kids at least have seen it before, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Did the
A brain
kids
teaser
enjoy
or
them?
something. Yeah, oh, the kids love them.
Yeah, so it's stuff that, more like a psychological test
Okay.
than it is, an achievement test.
So, when do you want me, what,
Global Scholar would be a good thing to
for
report on
March?
for
Do you want me to put that on
Yes,
March?
ma'am. Mhm. That would be great, I'll put it down too.
And the zip?
And the SIP. You'll have the SIP.
Action item for me. Thank you.
Good for
I'm
me
not
to
gonna
get
scribble
this.
it down.
You want me to put it to you to?
No, I'll
Okay.
have it, yeah, I'll have it. I did, it was sitting right there, I just don't know where I put it.
Okay, great, thank you so much. All right, so next up is the chair report. I don't really have much to report because in the interest of time, I like to kind of keep things brief, but so I'll just move on. Regina, e-vote report?
We had one e-vote this past month. We approved the January minutes on the 31st, the very last day. I was on it.
Cool.
I said,
I forgot. I did have one other thing I wanted to share, which was that I spoke with Ashley and she's working on collaborating with you on toileting procedures. And so it's
She's
not gonna
in
be,
town today.
so it's not gonna be discussed at today's meeting, in case anyone was wondering or looking for it. And so once you guys have had an opportunity to draft something, then she said that I could work on collaborating with her and some other families on giving feedback and input on it and
Okay.
helping to collaborate on that. So if anyone was wondering, I just wanted to give that update.
One more thing I forgot to say.
Sure.
I went out, did Amy's go out with my letter in it today?
Yes.
It did,
Mhm.
okay. We have a new teacher. We have
Oh,
a.
maybe it didn't.
The
Maybe
draft,
I was just on the test. Sorry.
there was a lot of technical difficulties. They're still working on it, I
That's
believe.
okay, that's fine.
I had technical difficulties today with the agenda too, if it makes you
No.
feel any better.
Everybody's having
Yeah.
fun. So we do have a new teacher. Her name is Cheryl McGee. She is the halftime special ed teacher replacing Ash Dolan. She worked at Urbana Elementary for quite a few years. She has a master's degree in early childhood special ed. Yay. And if you see her in the building, it's not Monica, but she is tall and blonde. So, you'll
It's a
know
doppelganger.
her. Yeah, so we are excited to have her. I forgot this.
Great. Thank you. Monica or Jennifer, our staff reps, do you guys have anything you want to share or?
Not too much. I mean, I did want to share the Wax Museum that we did. Well, all of the upper elementary, we've coordinated our history lessons and most of our culture lessons to be along the same realm. So it's been really exciting to see what each of us are doing. And for my students, it's they researched explorers throughout all of history, starting as early as Leif Erikson to as most recent as the astronauts, and all through time. And then they became their explorer. They dressed up and they stood in a standstill position until you pressed an on button, and then they came to life and they shared the life story their explorer lived. And it was really awesome for them. Not only did all the parents come, but also all of the upper elementary and all of the lower elementary came to our classroom throughout that morning to see my students perform. And it really lit up my students' learning and gave them that opportunity not only to be excited about what they did, because I said to them, do not think of this as a test of what you've learned. Think of this as a celebration of what you've accomplished today. And they really took and embodied that. And it was really nice for them to be able to share the things they learned with their peers. I think that's really when they came. They were really happy to share with their parents, but they were really excited to share with their peers. It's really when it came alive. So I really appreciate to all the teachers who took time out of their day to make sure that their kids were in my room so that my students could perform with them. Miss Zoe's class is putting together a news broadcast of their explorers, and I know that Miss Amanda and Mr. Craig, they also have some things in store for this month. Mr. Craig's class and my class will be going down to DC next Wednesday so that we can go to the National Archives And we were able to schedule this before the 15th so that we could make sure we had scheduled it for last month, and then, things in the world happened. So now we're really excited that we get to go down, my students and Mr. Craig's students get to see some of the primary source documents that we've been talking about, and the Declaration of Independence, and we're gonna go to the American History Museum. So it's really great how history is coming alive for my students, and that it's not just this static thing in a book. Books are really great though, of course. But it's not just something that's static, it's something that they're really experiencing. And lately, from what I've had with my conferences with my students, they've said that history is one of their favorite subjects because they love it. So you can look forward to that this month, or when they come out to you. Otherwise, things are really great. We're so happy that the weather has been warm and that we have a Monday and a full week of school. That's all.
A full day of school.
Yeah.
Yes.
First I'll talk about lower elementary. Gail, could you share a little bit about your field trips that you guys took the week before last?
Oh, well, all of lower L went to the Earth-Space Science Lab, and we divided up into first grade, second grade, third grade, because they have grade-specific lessons that they give there. And they all explored a variety of animals and learned about space and phases of the moon and constellations, and loved the iguana, and they had a really good time. So.
And
It's a
they
good learning
all
experience.
went, so it was a big undertaking for the
Yes, I
lower
went
elementary
3 days
staff.
in a row. So yeah,
It was a lot, but I heard great feedback personally in my house, so I'm sure it was.
the kids were wonderful. They really enjoyed it. They loved the hands-on. They're really good explorers, and they were very well behaved.
The only thing that I wanted to report about middle school is that we do have our first middle school official babysitting fundraiser, which is happening on February 16th. And some e-news went out. Everybody got a flyer. I think it was the week before last to sign up. And tomorrow, the pre-registration is what went home already, where you could go to the Sign Up Genius and secure a spot. But what's going to go home tomorrow is the actual registration form, because there's a release that's sort of based off of the Clubhouse Kids release. So that's going to go home tomorrow. And those forms and the money for those forms will be due this Friday. So it's important that we get a count of how many we're expecting so we can figure out how many middle schoolers to allocate. All of the funds that are raised from this event, which is a Cat in the Hat inspired Valentine's Day party. So you can drop your kids off and they can play Cat in the Hat games. There will be activities specific for the older kids and then separate activities for the younger kids. So it's not like, if your 10-year-old isn't interested in watching Cat in the Hat, there will be other things to do. And so the idea is that the parents would have a free night, the kids could come and hang out, and all the details are on the Sign Up Genius that was sent out. And then again, the waivers will go home tomorrow. But we do need to know for sure by Friday who is coming and have the money for that, so we can make sure that we have enough participation to make it a go.
And the money raised?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. The money raised will go towards the middle school trip to Chincoteague. So the students who participate in the fundraiser, it'll be banked into their accounts. So the middle schoolers who do the actual babysitting, who come and run the little activities, it'll be a way for them to earn money for their spring trip, which is quite expensive. So again, it's to set off the cost of the kind of proposal from, I think it was last month's GC meeting, and trying to close that gap for students who need to raise funds. Just to follow up on that, we did send a donation sheet home with the middle schoolers, and so they received kind of the first round of that. We didn't send the one yet to the whole community yet because we wanted to kind of see where we were settling after the first one came in, and also we'd have to adjust some of the number of students who may need assistance is still settling. So before we send out to the whole school, we wanted to make sure that we had a grip on exactly how much more money we need. So in the next month, that will go out. And I know I had an action item, Ellie, I think, to collaborate with you and Marissa about where that money will go, I think is what it was, right, Regina? So once we sit down as a team, since I've been out the last couple of days, we'll have more information on that, and then we'll do it.
And I think Kevin,
I had my
Kevin is
checkbook
one
today
today.
because I got a.
Kevin Cosweder already had brought his check.
Get it going, so.
So I guess we need to know where to make the check out.
Yeah, Marissa,
I'm trying to make it up to you. 'cause
Mary-
then
yeah.
I'll just leave you a blank one, actually. I think that would get a good response.
I think now I'm not gonna ask Marissa, because she's just gonna say, make the check out to me.
I don't think it's
We've
gonna
already
be.
gotten like 6 donations.
Yeah,
that's
I just think that's
nice.
something that
Yeah,
those
so
families
it's-
shouldn't have to worry
But you
about.
got
Where are they writing the checks
I'm
out
sorry.
to?
And to NVM. And then we put them in the account.
The middle school ones that already went out, those
Did
ones
it go into the
didn't.
SAF account or the?
So we discussed this with Amy O'Connor, Marissa and I did.
Oh,
And
great.
the logistics of having it go into MMCI and being tax deductible is really not feasible, especially for the amount of money we're talking about. So going into MVM is actually the right place. It should go to SAF.
Great.
So but they won't be tax deductible.
Okay,
Just make
well,
sure
we'll let
people are
them-
aware of that.
Okay. So who do people need to make the checks out to?
Then I guess it would just be to MVM, just like cause Cindy Youssef's the one who heads up generally, but I think Regina and Mary, I think it was MVM.
I did mine to MVM and she said that was fine.
Okay. So if there are any members of the community interested in making donations to sponsor some of our middle school students for this trip, write a check out to MVM.
Yeah, I think if we get enough volunteers, it shouldn't have to be a ton of money from any one person. It
Yeah,
should just-
right.
I don't know how many students there'll be that will fall in that need category, but I think as a school, we should definitely do a couple of that.
Our team has sort of been putting together that document that will go home. And the idea is that we have kind of a breakdown of what each thing costs for the trip.
Right.
So we thought it would be kind of cute for someone to be able to purchase, transportation to the beach party versus $25. So
Right,
that way
right,
they can
right.
like earmark it for a specific piece of the trip and they can feel like they're contributing. to
Right.
it.
That's
Yeah,
great.
So that's in the works.
Okay, great. Anything else?
I don't think,
Okay, great.
sorry, that was really long.
Kathleen? Oh, no worries. That's why I go short, so other people can go long.
Yeah, I have a few things. One is we have a couple of big events coming up through actually at each school, and that's the annual report in front of the Board of Education. CCM is on the Board of Ed schedule for February 27th. We'll be presenting their report. And MVM is doing their report at the next DOE meeting, which is March 13th. So I believe we're getting together this weekend.
We are getting together this weekend to work on the
To work
annual
on it.
report.
So that's in process. And another big focus of the DOT right now is we're looking at the legislation that was introduced by Governor Hogan for facilities funding for charter schools. We don't have a ton of information yet about what the final bill is going to look like. It is in committee. And that's where they rewrite it and tweak it and water it down and make it so we can't use it. But hopefully that won't happen. Anyway, there is a lobbying night in Annapolis on February 19th. I know at least one carpool will be coming from here to Annapolis. My car will hold 4 other people. So if you want to tag along with me. That's right, I'm taking the Prius. But I can shove 4 people in there. So anyway, we're encouraging people to really support this effort at facilities funding for charter schools because it's a huge missing piece. Many other states do offer charter schools facilities help. Maryland is one of the ones that does not. And so it's trying to be corrected at a state level. Like I said, we don't know if we'll get any direct, we don't even know if it'll pass. So last year it was introduced as well. It didn't make it out of committee. So we'll see what happens this year. Hopefully it'll get further, at least get to the floor of the legislature. And we'll keep you up to date on that. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the GC have anything that they want to speak to or report on?
Well, Kathleen, I want to thank you for your report today too. I did have time to read that.
Mary, anything? No? Okay, great. Moving on to committee reports. Does anybody have any questions about the fundraising report that Tara Dunsmore submitted? And does Tara Dunsmore have anything else to add to her report since she's here in the audience today?
The only thing I just had a meeting about the Race for Education right before this meeting. And there are a couple things that need to be determined. But I don't think. No. I'm not prepared. I haven't gathered my thoughts yet, so
Okay.
no.
Well, we do have a vote for the Race for Education, don't we?
No,
No,
that
no,
was
no,
she's gonna
never
say
mind.
that.
Do we have a final date for that?
Right, never mind.
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
Oh, the pizza and.
That was what I confused it with.
So we do, I just sent you, Regina, a revised proposal for that, just emailed it to you because some of the donation amounts were wrong, so I just sent it to you.
Okay, got it.
That's all I have.
But there's no fundamental change to
No.
whether or not you're asking the GC to vote to approve any money.
No.
Okay, cool.
No,
Was there anything else? Sorry.
that was
Okay.
it.
Does anybody have any questions about the community outreach, hospitality, or community coffee information that we received?
I know that Jen could use one helper. I know that Miss Amanda is bringing down 2 kids with her for that parent meeting, and they give a very interesting interpretation of Montessori. But I know that it would help her. I guess she had a pretty large group this last month.
Okay.
So if anyone has time, it's on the calendar in there. I think it's the 15th. Yeah, the 15th is the next tour.
Okay. Do you want to reach out to Deb KT about that, or do you want me to?
I think she already did at Deb KT's coffee. She already asked.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Volunteer committee, does anybody have anything to talk about on the report we received? No?
Well, Deb is having a training this month.
Okay. Yeah, no,
I
please.
can't remember which one.
She
though.
said the 11th.
The 11th.
She said
Yeah,
that
it's
she
on
was
her
waiting.
It's on Monday, yeah.
She was waiting for you.
And we connected and I said, great, and I think she said 7 o'clock maybe? 7 p.m. Thank you.
I don't know, I know it's here.
Yeah, it was in her report.
Okay.
Okay, hiring committee, I don't see Marie. We already received. Does anybody have anything? Okay. Communications. Does anybody have anything else to add or any questions, anything they want to discuss with regards to the report we received from Megan? Nope. Okay. I will say there's some technical issues happening with the email distribution because they switched things over. So just putting that out there. I learned that the hard way today when I sent the agenda out.
Bounce back.
It bounced back, yes.
Oh.
Yes. Building and grounds, we have a new chair, Brian West. Welcome, Brian. Strategic planning. I guess we could probably take that out of there in the future, huh? Yeah.
Well,
Or should we leave it in there so we can go over a point?
Unless you
point every month.
decide to keep going over the strategic plan, which I would certainly recommend.
I think we should do that.
Oh,
Who
you
wants-
mean,
who
as
wants-
a means of like.
Like bringing up a point every,
Just every
month.
month, just talk about a feature or a section of the strategic plan.
I think that's a great idea. Who wants to be in charge of bringing up a new item off of the strategic plan every month?
I don't mind doing it since I've already been working on the strategic plan.
Okay,
That's fine.
great. I'm gonna put you in there then.
That's fine.
Great. Thanks, Monica. Building search committee, any updates to your update?
Well, a few things I've been thinking about. So, this is all new material, guys. I have been talking with the landlord and we have asked for a 1-year extension here in this property. We also discussed this at the BOT meeting last Wednesday and all decided collectively to not take advantage of the 5-year renewal option in our current lease. And the reason for that is because it wasn't in our favor. So basically, we would have been pre-agreeing to a 5-year contract, and it would have been at market rental rates as determined by his real estate professional. So we didn't really see any good reason to tie ourselves into that. So we're really kind of back to, I've talked to him on the phone and I emailed him twice to request what his response is to our proposal. And I've really not received a response so far. So that's kind of the genesis for an item that's later on the agenda where we're asking for some funds to turn this over to the MMCI attorney. Not because I don't mind doing it, it's just, maybe the bigger guns will get him to respond more quickly. And so a lot of people have been asking me, well, what do we think he wants? What he has told me is that he wants a significant increase in the rental rate. And I keep saying, well, what does that mean to you? What is a significant increase? And he has not answered. So the question is, so what do we use for planning down the road? And I was thinking about it, and I think this makes sense to do this until we have more information. Listen to this, Marissa. Until we have information to the contrary, I think what we should do is use the clause in our existing lease that says if we do not come to an agreement with the landlord, that at the end of our lease, we convert to a month-to-month tenancy at 125% of our current rental rate. I hopefully will not be that high, but I think to be safe, that's what we should use as a planning tool until we have better information. And a quick calculation, that means we would be looking at a rental price of about $325,000 a year for this building. We are currently paying about $255,000. So that's a significant increase. Again, we'll see what the lawyer can do with this. We'll, hope it works out beautifully and we get a rent reduction. I don't know. But right now, I think to be safe, that's what we have to use for planning purposes. So.
Well, especially if he's not responding to you.
Yeah.
So he's stalling it.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I think just until we have better information, that seems the safe way to go. So those are my thoughts.
What were those figures again? I'm sorry. You said 155 to 325?
Correct.
Has he historically been this difficult to deal with? Or?
Yeah. He's really a study in contrasts. Because, when I talk to him and when I meet with him, he is amazingly gracious and pleasant. He's a real gentleman. But then he's cheap. He just doesn't give an inch on anything. So, but he does it politely.
Well, I think in some ways, we're also not in a bad position. If we weren't here, it would take him a year to find.
Well, it's true. I mean, we have some leverage. The leverage is he doesn't want an empty building.
Right. And it would take him at least a year to fill this building. I mean,
And that's if he's really.
that's if he's able to fill this building, because this is not an easy building for him to fill and have it be vacant. So, maybe hopefully we can.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that this will turn out badly. I just think that, we need to have some guidelines moving forward about how to handle this potential issue. And I would rather be conservative than not. So.
Anything new on?
No, they asked for some additional time to, I know they're in the process, this is the Oddfellows. I know they're in the process of electing a replacement person for their top position. I still don't know what to call it. The Grand Master for the Oddfellows. So when that's done, they said that they will be talking to us again about the purchase. So hopefully that will be in the next few weeks. So that's where we are.
no other properties that really come up.
Well, that's another conversation that we could have. There actually are a couple of things that we could potentially make work out. They are warehouses. It would be not downtown. But the square footage price would be starting at a level that would allow us to go in and modify the space, the interior space, and still be at a rental price that we could live with. But I think that's, again, a whole nother conversation because, in all of the meetings that we've had over the last 2 years, one of the biggest priorities has always been keeping this downtown location. It's just, other than staying here and making the best deal we can with our current landlord, that's going to be near impossible given the square foot price of these properties.
I thought when we had that all community meeting in the sanctuary, I thought it was sort of split between we have to be downtown and we don't. That they were
Well-
more concerned about playground. Am I remembering that wrong?
Yeah, we're always some people who are concerned about the facilities that the school has. But most of the input that I've gotten all along the way has been downtown location. Now, if you want to open that back up and ask for community input, we could issue a Survey Monkey or something like that to see if we can get some response from the current group of parents. If the priorities have shifted, I don't have any objection to changing focus, certainly. I think it's what the school wants to do or what the community wants to do. So,
And Kathleen, you said butterflies out because of the mold, right?
Oh, there's so much mold in that building.
well,
Which
it's not out.
One off of butterflies.
And how do you even mitigate that though? Is it even
Well,
safe to mitigate it?
It's a
square
hazmat.
footage.
Yeah,
problem.
there
Which
are
I needed it.
hazmat companies that handle large-scale mold mitigations. It would probably mean gutting the interior of the building. Because once you have mold inside the walls, it crawls up. And it gets into, and it would mean probably replacing the HVAC system.
I had a staff
because-
member email me today about it. That's the only
Yeah.
reason why I brought it up. And
Yeah.
I said, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it's not really on the table.
Yeah.
Because she just found the
It-
listing.
Well, I mean, they did tour it.
Yeah.
We did tour it.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think at the time, the other problem is it's not large enough for us. It's 18,000 square feet.
And we can't afford, based on that price, we wouldn't be able to afford the addition. Is that what it is?
Well, there's several, not necessarily challenges, let's say challenges. Yes, we would have to build a separate building. Hopefully we could connect them somehow, I guess, with a breezeway or something, but that we could do a 2-story, say 20,000 square foot building. Now you're talking about anywhere from about $120 to $140 a square foot to do that. So you're looking at about $2.5 to $3 million to construct something. Then you have the purchase of the original property and the renovation of that property. So could we do it affordably? Maybe, maybe.
And does it really ultimately get you really not? So
Well, I know one of the people that I talked to a lot about this, and I think this was one of the objections when we saw it before, was people were really concerned about the location and the traffic pattern, because it is on a major, connection point for 15?
15 and
Yeah.
40 and
And yeah, so apparently during rush hour, it is just a mess on both ends. So would that work for us being a commuting school? I don't know. So, and then there's the question of, we couldn't actually just outright buy the place. We would have to auction it, and then we'd have to go through all of the zoning issues and get approval for the project before I would recommend that we go to settlement on that. Otherwise, we own a property that we can't build on. So, you see what I mean? So it's not an easy question to answer.
And I don't mean to bring it up again, I'm just thinking like,
No.
you know, if we looked at it
Yeah.
before, I totally get that, but we are in maybe a different spot now where maybe things that were not appealing a
Yeah.
couple years ago might now be
Well,
workable.
Yeah,
Certain realities are setting in,
democratically.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's all that I mean.
Right.
And
well, again, this is another challenge is given the change that we need to make. So we would be increasing the density of the use of that property. We'd be bringing a certain amount of traffic in, and it's a level of traffic that would tip off what's called a traffic study. We would be required by the city to do a traffic study. Of course, we'd have to pay for that, and generally what the options are in the results of a traffic study is they either make you improve the road, which can be quite expensive, or they make you donate a sometimes sizable amount of money to a future improvement fund for road improvements. So either way, you're going to get dinged for the cost of traffic improvements. If you ask me how much would that cost, I don't have a clue. But I could tell you that it won't be particularly cheap.
is that just because the size of our school is not comparable to like when that school was in service?
Correct.
That was less
Yes.
children.
Yes.
What's the size of that lot? Do you recall?
It's about 4 acres. There might be a way to get another, like an entrance down on Himes Avenue. But again, that's an application to the city, and would they approve it, would they not? Depends on what their plans are.
And that's a lot of pollution.
Did I go to it? Did we all?
Yeah,
go
you were
to it?
there.
Which one? Where is it? I don't
Yeah,
know.
you remember the big white mansion? Didn't
Oh,
you?
It's very
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah,
It's just-
it's actually beautiful. I mean,
Yeah,
I
we
love
did.
it. I loved it, but could we actually do something with it? It's challenging. I mean,
I agree.
and I know CCM has actually looked at it twice and rejected it both times for the same reasons. They're like, oh my God, could we actually do this? And you know, their conclusion was no, they can't.
And it's not cheap enough to make it attractive.
Well,
There really wasn't that much land around it either.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
There was some, but
Yeah.
But not a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Still like
so-
double lot.
It's up on a hill, right? It's
Right,
why it's not
and
unusable.
because it's on the historic register, that means you're gonna have to maintain that viewscape, which means nothing in the front. And so that means any building that, any addition that we built would have to be like down the hill on the side. Could we get approval for that? Would it be
And I-
reasonable? I don't know.
And when it was a school, it had these beautiful fields behind it that are now apartment
Apartment
buildings.
Buildings, correct.
I looked there.
And I can't tell you, traffic there is horrible.
Yeah.
For,
So that's one of their considerations.
The live stream.
Just so you guys know, the live stream, we had a technical difficulty. It turned off for just a minute, so people at home, sorry, just
Okay.
missed a little bit of that
Sorry about
conversation.
I didn't say anything important.
Is it back up and running?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Does anybody else have any questions for Kathleen, or can we move on to the next topic? Thanks, Kathleen. Marissa. Hi. I think it would be great if you came up and spoke a little bit, because your report is always very long and full of so much important detail, so. Anything pressing on your mind? Does anybody have questions for Marissa?
I do. So Marissa had some suggestions for us. I thought we should talk about.
Yes.
One was re-implementing a past process where either the chair or the secretary notifies Marissa and Amy and whoever else is on this list.
Right.
When votes have regarding money.
Right. Yeah.
occur, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So I can add that to the secretary's list.
Yes,
Of things to do.
That's a
fine.
great
We talked
suggestion.
about that.
Yes.
We haven't had a money vote since we talked about it, so I don't mind doing that.
I think it's fabulous.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And you have Amy
Thanks for
O'Connor on
keeping
that
me
list.
accountable.
Yes, I had Amy, the school secretary, and myself. So any e-votes that go out will all be notified, as well as soon as this meeting is over, if anything gets approved, an email will go out to let us know to be watching for things.
Perfect. Thanks, Regina.
Also, you said that we should possibly start implementing use of forms for SAS.
So right now, when people go to spend MMCI money, I'll say MMCI money because it's our money, but in various accounts, we have forms that we have to fill out to let people know what we're doing. And so we don't have anything like that for the SAF. And it would be really helpful if we did, so that we could have everyone follow the same policies, procedures, all that kind of stuff, and make sure that everything's documented everywhere. I've talked to Tara, and Tara's gonna help.
The SAF goes through Nikki, correct?
Yes,
And Nikki gets audited every couple months.
yes.
Is she also thinking this would be helpful?
I'm thinking this would be helpful to her and everyone. It's, if we have forms that give basic information to the person that's processing it, to be giving all of that to just one person that's processing our transactions and not both people that are processing our transactions. It's just trying to create efficiencies in our basic work processes.
I love efficiencies.
Sounds fabulous.
So Tara's gonna create that.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
Google Forms, and so we're going to work on that.
Okay.
And we'll work with Nikki, of course, but we'll take a first stab, draft it out, and then she can say what else she needs or whatever.
It's not a one you usually hear, by the way.
I know.
I love
But-
Google Forms.
Amy O'Connor has already created multiple forms for MMCI level accounts. So we have a template already kind of to work from, so we can kind of use those as a guideline. And then Nikki would get a copy every time somebody submits the form, so she knows where the money's supposed to go or what it's being spent for. So it should make her life actually a little bit easier.
Now, you had created some forms for fundraising. And then now they're collecting money for the talent show on Friday.
Yeah, that's totally different than what we're
That's,
talking about.
okay, but they shouldn't use your form?
That's like a cash record form for when they're collecting
Right.
cash. We're talking about a
I know.
form,
I know,
Right.
you're talking about spending, but I'm
Right.
wondering also about that cash form.
yes, they should still use that. They have it.
They
I've
have
given it to them and they have instructions. Yes.
So a lot of times we make votes kind of on the fly to take money from SAF. Who would fill out the form then?
Whoever is trying to spend the SAF money, like if we were doing mulch and using Fire Up Your Feet, whoever is trying to go out and buy the mulch would be completing the form to give to Nikki and.
Well, because a lot of times we make that vote, and like as the secretary, I have no idea what happens after that. Who takes it over, who, if the mulch comes, I don't know.
Now we'll have a process again.
That's why you're up there.
Tomorrow it's gonna be beautiful.
That's smart for your rake. Does anybody else have any questions for Marissa, or do you have more?
I'm sorry,
Great.
read,
Yeah, go for
I
it.
read your report today. You also said that there is some meeting in January that you think we should go to regarding FCPS's
Okay,
budgeting
so
next year?
that's not a meeting for us, that was a meeting for the principals.
Oh,
Okay, and so what this is FCPS has a tight budget, like everybody. And so where they previously said, okay, principals, and this can be at our school or any school throughout the county, here's your money and you can spend it. And so the principals say, in this class, I want to spend $5,000. In this class, I want to spend $10,000. And within each class, you have multiple accounts. And they're saying, right now, as long as you don't go out of your budget within that class, you can spend the money however you want throughout the accounts. But this is saying principals, no, you have to now budget exactly what you're going to spend. And you cannot do any of this monkey business of, because you didn't spend $500 on textbooks, now you get to spend $500 on new Chromebooks or whatever it may be. They're trying to get more stringent. Now, for us, we have a surplus in reserve sitting on FCPS books. And so for us, that should not really apply to us. But it is worth our interest to reach out to FCPS to confirm that now, before it happens, that it does not apply to us, or ask them what it is, whatever it is they're trying to do, what is it that we can do to help them with how we prepare our budget, or whatever. I mean, I know they're the bad people, but you've got to keep an open,
We gotta work with them.
Says
yeah.
they're getting ready to take the excess funds back. Sorry.
That's fine. and-
Pessimistic, but pessimistic.
If that's the case, can we utilize those funds before they take them back?
They're not gonna just do it this year.
No, they won't do it this year. Maybe.
We have a written agreement that says that they are supposed to put our funds in reserves. Now, if they want to go against that agreement and all the charter schools want to go say FCPS, you can't just take our money when you have a written agreement that says you're going to hold it in reserves for us. It's up for the charter schools to determine.
That agreement is legally binding, yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, everyone follows it as it is. I mean, we follow the deadlines in it as we don't want to fall out of compliance with it.
Unless we want to build a wall.
Unless you want to build a wall.
You have to declare an emergency for that.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's in MMCI's best interest to reach out, just because this is something that does impact those schools.
So you're directing this statement towards MMCI?
I tell you guys, because you guys are the voice to MMCI to.
So Kathleen's gonna take it on up.
Making a note.
Kathleen's making her own action item.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm done.
Does anybody else have any
Yeah,
questions?
did we settle the whole surplus question that months ago when I was here?
So
came
I
up?
wrote up guidance, that we talked about at the work session, but that's where the guidance and logic that I compiled, this would impact that. So, because I had us basically moving the surplus that we have in contracted maintenance repairs up into our salaries, because that's where a bulk of what we're using is going towards. But I was gonna put it in just one salary line and not spread it throughout, so I gotta know how to budget moving forward before I can talk about how to manage the surplus.
a very detailed report, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your analysis. Does anybody else have any questions for Marissa? No? Okay. Thank you, Marissa. Okay. Are you ready, Regina? We're reviewing action items from the previous meeting.
Yes, most of our action items are still in process. However, there are two that I don't have an update for. Jennifer was going to start a book club for our school.
I received the book today.
3 books.
Yes. So, I'm going to take some time. I haven't had time yet since I received the book to
Books.
look the books.
I gave you 3.
Yes, but they're all the same.
For the same.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna read one of them.
Want to read all 3?
One at a time. I want to get a good idea of what I'm, and I keep saying brainwashing. I don't mean that. Of what I am talking other people into doing with me before I start it. So I'm really excited to read this, and I also am really, and I hope that those who are willing to join me on this journey are also going to be open to not only us reading this together, but my relating this to my own story background. And so I'm really excited about doing that. And so I hope that those who join me are open to any suggestions that I have for books for them to read that to further their Montessori understanding of our philosophy and the way that we direct our classrooms in our not so basic schools, because this is the basic school. Schools are not basic. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what where this will take us. So check back in with me.
I will. And this is the book that was mentioned in the strategic plan.
In our charter.
In the charter.
Mhm. Yep. This is the foundation for our charter in many ways. So you have 3 copies, so you have some to share.
Yes, so if anybody is interested in joining me anytime sooner than March, contact me.
Jennifer, I have my own copy and I will be joining.
Yay!
And I have a copy.
I got a copy and I'm about 30 through.
Oh,
So
you're
I'll
ahead of
join.
me.
Yay.
I would love to.
Is it
do that.
fascinating?
I'll take a copy.
It's the first book.
Oh, okay.
I found them used on Amazon Prime for like $5. So I bought 4 copies and I gave 3 to you. So I will be joining you on this
Is there any
journey.
wine in this book club? All the book clubs I know have wine.
We will not about every. No problem.
Tara?
My question is, are you putting this out like to the community, asking everyone to read it now while you're reading it, or you
I
want to read it first?
I'd
Then-
like to get a third of the way through as well.
Yeah.
I have not, I literally received this while I was calling for the awning today, and I've sat down for the first time since then
Okay.
here. So I apologize for not being more informed on this book sooner. But I really am excited about it. So I will, if I get further through the book before March and I'm looking for more people to continue to join us, I will make sure that there's something goes out to the community.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, like if you were gonna read it first and then, or if you wanted other people to be reading it now with you, or how
Like
you.
book club style?
Yeah, definitely book club style, but I do want to know what I'm talking about when I invite others to join me. 'Cause I don't know.
Okay.
I want to be transparent.
Informed.
Yeah.
So we'll wait.
Well, maybe the people who would like to participate can acquire copies if
Yeah.
it's more than the few people who.
It's called The Basic School, A Community for Learning by Ernest L. Boyer, Boyer, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. If anybody's interested in buying it.
Published 24 years ago, the basics, before charter schools existed. Charter schools are about 22 years old.
So The Basic School, if anybody's interested. It's kind of a textbook, really.
Yeah.
I got mine from Thrift Books, which is a used online bookseller, and I know they had more copies of it left if anybody's looking. Yeah.
Any others?
Yes, yours was to follow up with Marissa to discuss ongoing MCI annual
Oh.
fund marketing materials.
Yes, that's in process. I emailed.
Okay.
Like
Everything
5
else
minutes
is
ago.
either completed or in process and will be included in the minutes if you want more details.
Okay. On to the next topic, strategic plan.
Okay. So I compiled a list of the suggestions from Regina and from Marissa. And I didn't get any more, so I thought maybe what we could do is just briefly look through this. And if we don't want to like get really into it tonight, then people can always, look over it and then comment. I just wanted to see if there was anybody, I know I have one thing to bring for a potential suggestion, for a suggestion from staff. And then if anyone else wants to add to that, I didn't staple them because the copier was busted and I printed them ever so not eco-friendly, unfortunately. So it's three pages, I think. Thanks, Jennifer. Is that,
I need one more.
and then one more. No, we have plenty. Okay. So, some of them are just things like typos, which was very helpful. And then I didn't know if anyone had, since these were sent out a while ago, I didn't know if anybody had any comments relating to these things, or if you wanted me to share the staff suggestion first, or kind of where you wanted to start.
I'll follow your lead.
Okay, so then maybe we'll do the staff suggestion first, which this was sort of an outgrowth of our staff meeting with the GC a few weeks ago, just something that came up with staff that they thought would be maybe a good thing to insert into the strategic plan because it's going to be sort of an ongoing item that might be good for us to be keeping track of. So if you have the copy of the strategic plan, either electronically or a hard copy, this would be added to goal 2, which goal 2 is cultivate leadership and a community culture with a commitment to unity, volunteerism, and positivity. And totally open to ideas of where it might fit, but kind of where I thought it fit would be under 2A3. So 2A is ensure all decisions and actions made by teachers, administration, and the governing council and the BOT are in alignment with the MVMPCS charter, FCPS policies and regulations, and the strategic plan in order to continue to build a school community that remains true to our mission and vision. So what was suggested that was to be added is something having to do with an action item that sounds something like compile and distribute a historical list of policies voted on by the GC. So that was something that came up at our little staff GC, I don't know, Q&A work session that Amy came and led for us. And it sort of came out that staff was concerned, bless you, that there is some list of policies that must exist somewhere that have been voted on by the GC, and especially if they're policies that like staff is supposed to be adhering to, we need to be aware of those policies. So I know, Regina, you spoke at the meeting that you have some sort of a list going back to maybe 2015 or something.
Yeah, I
like
have a record of every vote that's been taken, so policies would be in there, but I have not actually gone and looked for the policies to like connect the dots. And I'm sure some of them are probably on the Google Drive, but it's kind of a mess. And not everything is on the Google Drive. I looked for something today, couldn't find it.
Okay.
So it's gonna be a process. It can be done, but it will be a process.
I think you may not find all of the history of this, but what we follow is the current set, well, the current charter, obviously, and the bylaws and any SOPs that have been issued, and those should be available. So the only time policies are changed, at least in my experience, has been coming up to the annual meeting when policy changes to the bylaws are discussed, voted on, and then they're put out to vote on. They're voted on to be added to, the annual meeting, and then they get voted on by the community at that point. So there is a record of all of this.
That's charter and bylaw
Mhm.
policy.
Yes.
But we just mean, I mean, maybe I'm, or maybe not just me, but maybe the people who came with this issue, are there not additional policies that are in existence that apply to MVM? I mean, because when we talk about like the word policy and how it's come up recently in all of our conversations, I mean, if there is some record of things that had been voted on by the GC, or maybe there aren't any. I mean, and another thing that came up was how this was in relationship to the dress code. So things like that have come up, which that never made it to the policy level that I'm aware of, but maybe it's just that there aren't any. Anybody else, feel free to jump in.
Since I have been on the GC, the only policies that we voted on
Or like in the handbook,
were
essentially.
the handbook, the GC vote policy,
Okay.
our SOP at one point, or the GC's SOP. You're right, we never finished with the dress code, so nothing changed there. We discussed the toileting thing, but nothing has happened with that yet. And then maybe something with the arrival and dismissal. I know it's been discussed a lot, but I don't know if it was a policy. I'm trying to look, but there's a lot of information on my
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
So
So,
included in the parent handbook.
yes, so I don't know if there was like a separate vote for that, but I've only been on there.
Okay. Well, I mean, if there aren't,
I
if
don't
there
think
isn't
that there
one-
is some sort of nebulous encyclopedia of policies. I think usually policies occur when something happens to bring them to the forefront. And
But
typically, like for example, a toileting or even a dress code policy, if we were to vote on that, that would then end up in the handbook,
Okay.
right?
So there isn't anything that we should be doing other than what is already in the handbook.
Right.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Well, I actually
unless
think
there's
that's a
something
very
else.
good question, and I don't
Needs
think
to
the
be
answer is
looked into.
absolutely, yeah, I think we need to
Yeah.
look into that.
And I would say
agree.
to you that we have a parent handbook
Mhm.
and our staff has their own handbook. So things that are in here are addressing the parent. But we also have members who are are staff members. So they have their own handbook. You know what I'm saying? So if there's something that would impact the staff, it should probably go
Right.
into their handbook.
And I don't know, I mean, like, this is just my thought here, which is, I don't know that the GC really needs to like delve into the staff's handbook and start working in that. Like, you guys are doing what you're doing, like, great. You're teaching kids, you're dynamic, so.
I just think that there was, after that meeting, I think that there was confusion about whether or not these types, like, because I think one of the things that Amy said at the meeting was about who can make policy. And correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who were here. And she was like, well, and I think you said this before, Ellie, too, well, anybody can make policy. You know, the neighbor next door can come and present a policy and then have it be voted on. Exactly. So I guess that was the confusion after that meeting, is a lot of staff came away saying, what are you talking about? Where are these policies if they're not in the handbook? Is there something that we should know as staff here that we don't know?
Karen?
I was just wondering, based on what you were just saying, is there something in the handbook that kind of gives an education of how our governing structure works and what the role the staff play in that? And is that not adequate? Like, does there need to be more education? And does that need to be part of the strategic plan of making sure that everyone in the school, staff, parents, everybody, are educated in how our system works?
Right? Our mission, vision, strategic plan, governance of our school, 501c3,
It's all in
MVMPCS, it's all
But
in
that's the
But is
parent
staff
handbook. I'm
aware
talking
of
about the
that as
staff
well?
handbook that might go into like more detail on.
We're not sure, we're not staff, we don't know.
Yeah.
And it sounds like not all staff does know, just like all parents don't know.
Well, and I do think that was a helpful thing that came out of the meeting with Amy, is just, you know, because we have had, and myself included, and we have newer teachers here. So just seeing that, and even just the distribution of like the charter and the flow chart and all of that stuff, I feel like was, you know, helpful for staff just to see that. But I think that was maybe it was a clarity question, because it sounds like if there's not some, it is general, and that's fine, but like the policies that we've been talking about that don't have an end point as of now are all very specific. And so I guess that was the question coming away from the meeting is, are there other specific policies that we should be aware of? I think the assumption was that maybe there were, just because over the years, certain things should have come up,
Right.
I would assume. And if they had, you know.
Well, and that's where your fearless leader Nancy helps staff navigate kind of all of that stuff. And if Nancy,
And you all approved what goes, so there's things here about
and it's on
how
the
to get
website.
involved, attendance, morning drop off,
Right, but I think we're talking about
dismissal.
what staff is, not parents, we're talking about what staff is aware of and has access to.
Well, just,
and-
I mean, over the years, if the GC has voted on like very specific policies, like toileting, or, you know, other things that have come up with like, you know, there's so many,
Like the sign-in.
yeah, like the sign-in, like,
Security.
right, all of those sort of things, but it sounds like there wasn't any specific voted upon policy that came out in any of those instances.
Well, that's not
Well,
necessarily true.
not
But
necessarily
we
true. I
wanna
mean,
make
how,
sure we do our due diligence before we come something and then we say, oh, okay, we should start.
right, and so that's where you go to Nancy and run it by her and talk to her about it, right?
Of course.
Right, yeah. So, but like, for example, the handbook started with founding parents, they're the ones who wrote that. And that is a guiding policy, that's where it began. And as our school grows and changes and evolves, and that's why our charter is really written the kind of the way it is so that we have the flexibility to make changes to the policies that we have set forth in the handbook to evolve with the community.
And I was just gonna say, I just got a message from Deb Nutt's title. We've had discussions on policy before. We had a discussion on discipline policy about taking away recess, but a lot of times they're discussions and they don't lead to actual policy. They just we kind of work it out, but nothing is written down officially a
Well,
lot of times.
actually, after that, when we did change the verbiage in the parent handbook and you all.
Right, and that gets voted on, right.
Okay,
So I guess if that's a policy, then that's what we vote, then that is our.
But there are some, I have to say I'm just thinking of field trips. A couple years ago, we had some field trips and kids came late. And then parents want to drive them to the field trip. And so the teachers got together and the leadership team and talked with me and said, no, they have to be here on time to get on the bus to go on the field trip. Parents can't drive them. So we understand that, but that's not in here.
Right, but in the absence of policy, Nancy is the person we defer
We
to.
try to do common sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
right,
So if it's in the parent handbook, then that's what we're responsible for knowing as a staff. And if it's not in the parent handbook and we would like to see it in the parent handbook, then we draft it and we bring it, and then
yeah.
that's the.
Well,
you're- I
wait
mean-
a minute, not necessarily. I mean, I don't think you can give that clear an answer because it's making me think, in the times that I've been here, or the years that I've been doing, we have had many discussions, both at the DOT level and at the GC level, concerning specific instances that moved us to want to make a change somewhere. So I think what we ought to do is go back and maybe straighten out the Google Drive and maybe look to see if those documents, talk to people who have the institutional memory. So I don't think it's fair for us to give you an answer. I understand that you want something that you can say is the answer, but I'm not comfortable with giving you the answer at this
Well,
point.
so then it would go in the strategic plan, because it would be in the next, moving forward, we are going to figure this out and then put it out there. So I don't think anybody's looking for immediate resolution, but I think we're seeking resolution, and if it's not something that can be immediate, then it should, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the strategic plan, but it needs to go on record
Right.
that we are requesting this as a staff.
And then for
Yeah,
that
but
matter,
I
I
don't
think,
think that goes in the strategic plan.
Okay.
Because the strategic plan is the big ideas about the evolution of the school. You want to stay away from detail in the strategic.
The minutia, you get lost in the minutia.
So you
Just-
don't want to ever have minutia in a strategic.
I
plan.
understand
What
that.
she's saying is like, in the future, with writing our policy, do we put in the strategic plan that we will put this, anything that we want as teachers and staff to continue with the growth of the school in order for the benefit of the school, so that things are more clear in the future, so that we don't have these long conversations over something.
Well,
Should we put in the strategic plan that we decide we're going to put something that we wanted to enact in policy?
well,
I don't
no,
think so.
because.
Right.
It has to.
No, you don't, because first of all, then people are going to give more importance to the strategic plan than it really deserves. It is not a policy document. It is not a decision document. So it's
It's not the
simply.
mechanics, it's more of a
it's a
big
plan.
picture.
It's a direction.
It's a, right.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just sets a direction for the school.
It's more of a
And
compass
that's
than it is a map.
completely
This should be
valid.
possibly added to
But
the
it's-
DC SOP.
But it should be addressed.
Right.
The
As
strategic
a
plan, I
thing
don't think is the
to do.
place to do it, but the concern is valid and it should be
Because
addressed.
that's the
Absolutely, I
minutia.
agree.
Right.
I'm
what
saying
we're
the
doing.
concern is valid, but I just, again, I really hear the request, and this has been going on for the past several weeks. The request for certainty and for what is the rule, what is the guideline, what is, I want to know exactly what I can do and what I can't do. And I think that we're not comfortable giving you that kind of direction. I mean, we're just not.
Well,
And
that's
it's-
it borders on micromanaging.
And there
so
can't be a
I
policy
agree.
for everything either, that's why you have a principle that.
Until it does.
Right.
Which
So
is
we
happening
hit that
right
brick
now.
wall,
Right,
Which we
and
can
then, which we had the ultimate referral.
or for that matter, allowing for that flexibility, because I think, one of the balances that we have to make is like, making sure that we have a lot of clear, transparent stuff like that. But then also not over policying every little detail for that matter as well. And this also brings me to another thing, which is new and has become really apparent to me given this newest stuff, which is, long time ago when I was at the school, staff understood all of these things. And so I think that with a lot of the newer staff that we have, the concern I have is that you guys aren't getting adequate training and on how charter schools work and how our charter school specifically works. So I almost think, maybe not in a staffing plan, but we have come up with some troubleshoot, maybe some of that, so that we can make sure everybody understands how it works, and especially new staff that come in.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is the staff are all members of the MMCI community. You're all voting members of the MMCI community. So it isn't, so in a sense, when Ellie said, yeah, anybody can bring a policy, not anybody can walk in off the street and post a policy. But people in the community can request that the GC consider issues and perhaps, a piece of policy will come out of that, or a procedure will
Or some
come out of that.
guidance. towards
Some
something,
guidance
yeah,
will
right,
come out of it.
right.
But, I'm actually, I am quite surprised that the staff didn't seem to know that, to be honest. I mean, because you're all part of the community, and I think
Didn't know what, I'm sorry.
didn't
No.
know that they can interact with the GC in that fashion.
I don't know that they didn't know it. It was just trying to figure out whose responsibility, like who does what in this leadership structure.
Right.
That's what it is. It's not, and we keep being told that, the GC is a policy-making body. And so what we are asking for as a staff is we need to know and understand any voted on policy.
Okay,
So-
that's a very clear request, and I think we can do that.
But I think it's important though to lens that historically, not back, 15 years, but anything that's come up in like the recent history here that is important for us to know that was a voted on GC policy. I mean, I feel like if it's not in the handbook, then let's try to figure out what it is so that we can gain that clarity.
So that we can have consistency in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can I volunteer to continue with my voting sheet, and I will go through
and look for policies, and if I find them, I will make a separate list and see if I can find the actual document, if there was a document made, and that can be a thing that I do. And I would give myself till the end of next year, so that we can.
That's amazing.
Action
item for
because
Regina.
because I've already done a lot of 3 years of the work, and I don't think that there's anything, but I will triple check, and if there is something, I will.
No, there is, how do we incorporate that into the
And
existing
then I will
handbook or-
say,
yeah,
we have
exactly.
stuff,
So then we have to have
where
an
do we
updated
want it,
handbook, right.
so that everybody can access it, and we
I
can
don't
add
know.
it to the handbook. This is where you go to find our policies if you are unaware.
Okay.
Exactly.
And if there is not a clear, like, place where that is said, then speaking to what Jennifer said, maybe it is appropriate to look back. I mean, if you look at B for the strategic plan, establish procedures to increase communication among all stakeholders. Well, maybe that's something that we do moving forward. Maybe it doesn't belong in A, maybe it belongs in the one that talks about SOPs. Because if there's not a step-by-step procedure for how we are keeping track of this information for institutional memory, then we need to be doing that. So that's,
Well, I would also say that it should be added the next time we do our GC SOP.
to put it on.
Somebody's responsibility is to ensure that any policies are
Documented.
put wherever it's
Yeah.
supposed to, wherever we decide that place is, but that should be an official
Okay.
thing, I would think.
Whether it's an addendum or,
And I'm also, something I'm
But
concerned
this
about.
I won't be,
Raising her hand.
sorry, I won't be
Yeah,
doing
I know,
MMCI
Mary and
policies.
Tara, but
Sorry.
MMCI policies are different, I just want to say, like, I
Mhm.
don't know, I won't keep going through those.
no. Mary?
Since I was in here a while back, a couple of things.
Sorry.
I'm not- No, it's fine. There are FCPS policies, that's
Mhm.
the default governance of everything, right? So,
And nothing we can do can
yeah,
supersede.
so somewhere, yeah, all policies we have, kind of like the Federal Register, isn't that where they record all the laws that Congress passed, or something, we need a place where all that is kept up, and maybe that ultimately is the handbook. It can't just be this other
Right.
amended document.
Right.
And if it's a policy, then it has to, like you said, go into the handbook every year. I think
Mhm.
maybe one of the questions is, but it sounds like what we're kind of starting to describe here is an incredibly detailed I mean, I realize policies rise when needs arise,
Mhm.
but at the same time, do we really want
To over-legislate.
policies more than we have? And the question is, what do we do when the policy is not directly stated? And what is that plan? And how does that go?
Well,
You
and that plan
suggested
is,
you defer to the principal
Right.
educator. If perhaps that, everything not specifically stated in this handbook as policy will be
deferred to Nancy.
the subject matter of the administrator.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be said in our handbook if it's not, or in our, wherever these places we're gonna record this, 'cause that's what we're getting at.
We are not fully aligned to FCPS policies. Just telling you.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I know,
we do
I know.
have some-
But there are some that
There
are.
are gray areas there.
I would say that,
mean,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, even when we talk to FCPS, they will say, well, you guys are charter schools, you have a little flexibility
The
here.
flexibility is
Tell
recorded
us
specifically in
what
the
you're
handbook.
doing. I mean,
That's where
honestly,
the flexibility is recorded. When we differ from FCPS, it is stated in our handbook. When FCPS school, until our handbook says otherwise. And if our handbook and FCPS don't address something, then that's where, then we need something until
Well,
we can make a policy or not make a policy to govern the actions of the interim.
And here's actually where I think it maybe, because I've looked at a lot of FCPS policy, a lot over the last 12 months specifically. And one of the things that I've learned is that FCPS policy is actually written very vaguely so that each school can address needs as they arise because those needs evolve. And so it's very, I would say that we actually, there's not anything that we don't conform to SBPS policy for. And so when we create policies, what we're doing is we're taking an existing FCPS policy and then we are refining it even further. There's no policy that we have that actually supersedes FCPS policy because that would be breaking our charter and the law. Tara, did you have something?
I just wanted to say that we have a Google Drive that is our document repository, and there is a folder called MVMPCS policies, and in that folder should be any voted on current policies that are being followed. There should be a copy in there, and when I was the webmaster, and when I started here, I regularly would get documents from various people. I'd get a copy of the handbook, and that's where I would put it. So if I was going to then, eNews was going to send out that document, first it would go into the policies folder, and then it would be shared from that folder so that everybody would have access to it. And I'm looking at it, and there's a bunch of stuff from 2017 in there, which is when I was the webmaster. And again, that's one of those, it's not a policy, but it's just a word of mouth from one committee chair to the next. Things aren't always passed on. And then in that time, we've had changes in administration, we've had changes in staff, we've had changes in volunteers. And so I think that is where things need to be like codified, like in the GC policies, that when you guys do a vote, once there's a formal document, it gets sent to the webmaster to put in the Google Drive because that's where it lives. And then from there, everybody has access to that. Everybody here has access to that folder.
So I feel like that 100-year-old senator asking Mark Zuckerberg questions about Facebook. How do I get that?
If you start on
This was my note for one of the items, is that people join the GC, people join committees, people chair committees, and nobody knows about the Google Drive. And if they know it's there, they don't know what to do with it, where things go. There needs to be some sort of handing off of
I'm scared I'm going to delete something from it when I.
So if we don't know, we can't expect the community to know. We can't expect staff to know.
And when I was
That's asking a lot.
webmaster, I used to try to do I would send out emails offering to train people on Google
Mm-hmm.
Drive and stuff.
Right.
And so that is something that maybe I didn't really pass on to the person who took over from me, just probably under the assumption that he already knew. And that's, I think, what happens a lot when we pass things on. And so maybe that needs to be one of the job duties of the webmaster, or someone on the IT committee would be to provide training and support to everyone on how to maintain that document repository.
Or even each committee chair, that could be.
Right.
If I have to give like a regular budget update to incoming GC people, Tara or whoever could do something around Google and all that kind of stuff.
That being said, maybe the solution would be to have regular committee chair meetings so that that information is getting kind of passed on in like a loop. Right now everybody's sort of operating their own little vacuum, and so there isn't a lot of communication between the
And
different groups.
to be perfectly honest, we kind of depend on the staff reps to communicate what's going on at the GC to the staff.
Oh, yes.
So now, and sometimes things get lost in translation. I think it's not as bad now because we're doing the live stream. So if somebody wants to go back and watch the discussion, they can do that. But it is putting a lot on people if, that's another thing that you guys have to do. And I think one thing I took away from the staff meeting and the concerns that were discussed was that we have a huge communication problem between the staff and the GC. And in fact, I talked with the facto president about this afterwards, and she brought up the same thing. She said, "You guys have a communication problem." So, the suggestion was, and I think it's a good one, is that we all ought to meet together more regularly. So rather than having a crisis occur and then having a meeting with the staff, maybe we ought to talk to you guys more often.
Why do you think?
I would just add that the staff watch this more than almost parents do. I can't tell you, after a Monday night meeting, I walk down the hall and they say, "Watched it last night, watched it till I fell asleep, watched it last
That's
night."
a lot of time.
So if you ever could document that, I think that many of them really do listen.
Well, I'm not saying they aren't. I'm saying it's a really great thing that Ellie, you know, spurred on this development of you doing a live stream. I'm just saying that, you know, now if people don't understand, or there's something they're missing, or they can't get it from the notes, because obviously you can't include everything in the notes, you know, there's a way to go back and watch the conversation. So it's a good thing.
But we're specifically talking about laws and policies that we passed, right? Because we can talk about communication and transfer of information all night. We're specifically talking about a place our voted on
Right.
laws have been recorded, laws, for lack of a better word, have been recorded. Because we're talking about communicating with incoming committee chairs, and this discussion could go on all night. Specifically, where is our code of laws recorded?
It's
Is
the
issue.
handbook.
And it's the handbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the,
Like
so
that.
Google Drive or no Google Drive, it's the handbook.
It's the handbook.
Well, and if you go in that folder, the first file is the parent handbook.
Yeah.
Then if you have policies throughout the school year that maybe are voted on or
Yeah,
created in
until the new
handbook,
handbook comes
right,
out.
that's where they
Right.
would
That's
live.
where they would go. That's where they
That's why I
live.
asked you to vote on
Yeah.
it, but you know what, toileting isn't coming out as a separate reminder, because
Oh.
they
Hasn't been
Because it wasn't-
decided yet.
Because it wasn't voted on.
Right.
It was in the lottery though, when they signed up, it said they had to have it.
Regina,
Yeah.
I
let
just
me
wanna say, in
clarify that.
regards
Wait
to
a
the
minute.
Google Drive, where you said the parent handbook is the first thing in policies and whatever
Mhm.
you called it. I was looking for that today to print a new copy, and I went to parent handbook, and it wasn't there. I didn't go to policies.
Because it's,
something.
and it's not, I don't, well, I will say, our,
So, like-
first of all, our website has not been maintained because they're building a new one. But if you go to our website
It's on there.
and you click on
Last year's
parents
is
and,
on
and
there.
you hover over parents and students,
It's last year's.
above the link for the parent handbook is a link that says MMCI and MVMPCS files.
It's in
From
the
that,
folder. It's in the folder,
Yeah.
MVM
there's a
policies.
policy that
Yes,
says
but
MVM.
I'm saying there is a folder called parent handbook. So
Oh.
there is like an issue with the Google Drive just being
Oh, well, yeah.
organized properly, because
For
I was
sure.
looking for the handbook and I went to the handbook.
Right.
And it wasn't there. I would have never thought to go to policies
There's
because there was a
also-
handbook file.
That's a link to the governing council meeting minutes and agendas. So that's where you're gonna find any record of anything that's ever happened in these, at these meetings. That's how you get to it.
Kathleen?
Well, first of all, that should be somebody's passion project. So if somebody is coming into the GC and they want to know what they should be working on specifically, that might be a great suggestion for someone. So I'll just put that out there. The other thing I want to clarify from the Board of Trustees perspective is that we do not have a policy about independent toileting at the Board of Trustees level. The vote that we did was pertaining to the language in the lottery page. And that was decided on by consultation with the GC chairs and discussion among the BOT members, and it was the language that was decided on. So the Board of Trustees really has no policy on independent toileting. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Unless we go way back in the voting, we don't know. Right, Carol? I mean, it could have been voted on 10 years ago and we wouldn't know.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
No, it definitely wasn't
It
very
wasn't.
long, 10
No,
years ago.
yeah,
It
it
was
was not.
It's
taken,
been here a long time, hasn't it?
It has not been.
I don't
voted
think there's been a vote on it. I think it's been taken case by case.
Well, I
And
do wanna,
nobody
And
takes
and
it
by
to
the
there was-
teacher
idea.
and how it's handled, you know,
Yeah.
in the administration, but I know there's not a policy
Well,
on it.
just to provide some clarity, we did receive an email right when this first started out saying it is an MMCI policy, and Kathleen, you did say that at the last GC meeting. So
Well,
we did, I mean,
and
just to
I
clarify.
went and I checked and I was told that I was wrong.
No, but I mean, we have an email from Amy that says the same thing.
Well, then Amy may be wrong.
No, and I understand that, because Amy said that at the BOT last week also, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying to provide clarity on why there's confusion.
And
It's
I
because right out of the gate, she lived.
I tried to clear that up actually at the staff meeting, and I was not able to get that comment out, because I was going to modify that and say, no, what we did was we voted on the language on the lottery enrollment page. That was what we voted on.
Well, it was
So-
on the agreement language, on the language in the agreement.
Does
What
this just
agreement?
go back to what
It's
the
a-
handbook says? So if we were to read in the handbook, we'd be able to see the language?
No, it's not in
No,
the
because
it's
it's
not
a-
in the handbook.
because
Not,
it's an
or,
Well, it needs
MMCI.
oh,
to-
is,
and it
what about
needs to be in the
MMCI?
handbook.
Right, so we just need to
So-
put the what
So, and
MMCI
that's
has
what
in
we're
the
all
handbook.
kind of talking around now, is like,
Yeah.
Put it all
what
in.
It's just the
procedure is gonna be
language.
written down, and how's
Right.
it gonna be linked to the handbook, et cetera.
She's saying MMCI has no language.
Oh, they have no language.
They
I
have
thought they had
language
a,
for the lottery.
We have language for the lottery enrollment page, but we
That's it.
have.
It's
as
called
far
lottery
as the-
agreement.
right.
It's called the
okay.
lottery
The-
agreement.
Because
The,
MMCI does not.
As the board of trustees,
Got it.
we've never had a discussion about independent toileting. We do not have a policy on it.
Because they leave it
The
up
lottery
to the
agreement
school.
says pre-K students are required to be independently toileting before the start of the school year.
Yes,
Okay.
that's
That's the-
language
that's the
in the
only-
lottery
Required.
That's the
agreement,
only sentence
but
that's
it's
listed.
not a policy.
All right. I see.
It's not the hand-
And
Correct.
everybody thinks it's a
Right.
great idea.
So it needs
So-
to be in the handbook written in some way. Got it.
And I will say, every fall we review this handbook.
I know.
Every
Yeah, yeah.
fall, Yeah, we
For
go
sure.
through it, try to see if there
Yeah.
anything we're missing.
Should I make
Well,
notes?
That's
to,
something
uh,
that
to
something
make
that we're
Case
missing.
by case in the
That's
terms of
something that we're
each other
missing and
looking
we're
on.
gonna fix it.
Okay.
So,
It's gotta be a procedure for when we vote on new things to get it into the handbook.
Yeah, but they don't need to worry about it.
I don't have a Google Plus account.
Don't worry about it.
That was,
Not relevant.
and I,
Okay. Anything else on the strategic plan that we want to talk about, or do we want to take these notes?
we
and
have
edit
these
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give one to
Let's take
everyone.
these,
Yeah.
Can you,
there's a lot here.
you have it in a document?
Yeah, I
that you
can
get
share it.
to review?
Yeah.
Have what in a document?
Yeah, this
This,
is great.
these notes.
I'd like to have time to read through them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
Okay.
Right. All right. Let's talk about the washer and dryer. How, was it $500?
well, first of all, let me talk about locations, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. I walked around the building, with Denise, and we looked for locations where you could install a washer and dryer. One of them is where the old church, used to, the last location they had a functioning washer and dryer was inside the girls' restroom in the multipurpose room. There is a space there for a washer and dryer, the hookups are still there, the electricity is still there, so that actually would be the easiest place to install a washer and dryer. The other place that we found was in the custodial supply closet in lower elementary. We have to do a little moving shelves around and stuff, but there is a dedicated circuit on the electrical panel for a washer and dryer right in that room. So there apparently was one there at one time. So it really just depends on what people think would be the best location. It will be a little more difficult to install one in the custodial closet, but then it's closer to all the classrooms.
Could someone reach out to Larry and ask him, because
Yeah.
here's what happened. We
Okay.
put in an extra microwave, Knox Title donated one, it was really great, but there are times that we blow fuses around here. They just-
Okay.
Everything goes.
Well, you know,
And
and I don't have any
that's my-
feeling about this one way or another. I mean, if you guys want it in the multipurpose room, that's fine.
who's gonna use the washer and dryer?
Well, I think the
All
staff
teachers.
was, the teachers are very interested in having one available to wash
Mats.
mats and rugs. Because right now I believe the teachers are like taking those home on a rotating basis and washing them. So it'd be nice to be able to do it
So
here.
everybody needs, okay.
Um,
Gotcha. It's not just.
Denise,
custodian.
the
No.
custodian, said it would be helpful because there are a lot of like dust mops and rags that could be reused if they were washed. Some have to be discarded, but not all of them,
The
and that
teachers
would
will be using them.
reduce our supply costs. And then it might also be available for an occasional student to use if needed.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's who it would
And
be.
the kids have those rugs, you know, and those need to be washed quite a bit, so.
We're trying to get on top of that. Location.
Right. The amount that I was suggesting, you guys can, you know, whatever you want is fine with me, but I was thinking $500 because I've been watching Craigslist and eBay and things, and it seems like you can get functioning late model washers and dryers for around that price. So I would say it's just kind of, you have the amount approved and then we look until we find the magic pair, you know?
Are you thinking 500 total or 500?
I was thinking 500 total, actually.
Probably want something kind of heavy duty, I would think, if you're
Well,
doing rugs, and is it gonna be used often, or, cause it's
Yeah.
not, you know, better to spend a little extra money maybe and get something that's gonna last?
no, well, I think if you're,
Did you find it?
I think you can find it and also, I mean, there's home washers and there are commercial washers. Commercial washers are a lot more expensive, so if you
Yeah,
want
right.
something really heavy duty, you need
Right.
a commercial washer.
Or maybe on the more heavy end, the higher end of the residentials, you know,
Yeah.
cause there's a spectrum even there, you can get them for nothing. We could also check with like a place like Peace and Plenty, who takes old ones in and rebuilds them, and in my experience as a landlord, the older ones that don't have electronics,
Yes.
they do a lot better, and then if you do have to fix it, cause the electronics go, you're just screwed. I'd rather have an old one that has been redone.
Yeah.
It's had the belts replaced, and things like that, like the less gadgetry.
The less
To it.
buttons.
So Peace and Plenty is a great place to look for something like that, because they take in old ones and they completely refurbish them, so maybe that's an option too.
And that was just the amount I was suggesting, if you guys wanna put more money towards it, sure. I mean, Whatever.
I definitely don't think we need to vote on where it goes. I think we'll leave
Oh, yeah.
leave that to
The teachers.
the teachers
Sure.
and Nancy to
Yeah.
decide that.
It's
not in the
And
handbook.
whoever knows.
I've
I'm
got things at
sorry.
Peace and Plenty for $500. That
I was
have
gonna say,
lasted years.
I also feel more
Yeah.
comfortable
Yeah, right,
purchasing
right.
from a place like Peace and Plenty than Craigslist.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Just-
they'll warranty it, and then if it needs to be
Oh,
fixed,
yeah.
they'll come out.
They're
You know,
really
I mean,
great.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
They're good people.
They are.
Like I said,
I think $500 would be enough.
What is that, does anybody else, does anybody disagree that $500 is plenty for Peace and Plenty?
Well, if it isn't, then.
We'll come back. I would say
Right
up-
back,
For now, we
yeah,
can do
that's
up to
true.
$500,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
that way.
Okay, I motion to approve, up to $500 for the purchase of a washer and dryer. Funds to come from the MMCI MVM School Fund. Melissa?
You've got a lot of things that you have coming from the building improvement and repairs
Mhm.
category possibly. I don't know where you ended on some things, but that's where this would come from.
Okay,
You've got,
so coming from building improvement and repairs fund.
Mhm.
Just, you know, the price of commercial washers themselves are just about, you're talking about like new ones at Lowe's are between $800 and $1,000.
Yeah.
The same price for a commercial dryer. You're not gonna wanna use a home one if you're gonna have the 25 mats at once. If the teachers are using for that, you're looking at a larger budget, because you wanna have something, like you guys said, that actually will withstand the use and abuse that the school's gonna get, or you're gonna be spending the same money in 3 months when it breaks down.
Right, so
And-
we'll let Kathleen navigate that, thank you.
It's a good point.
It is a great point,
And maybe we can do that Peace and Plenty too, they have some more
right,
commercial.
And we
Well-
wanna make sure that it's not gonna blow up our
You-
usage,
right.
so we don't wanna make it too.
and for that matter, my thought process is, if we get a new building, then we might look into getting something. Yes, well, I mean, if this is our new building, that's a whole nother story, but I don't want to think that way yet. Do I have a second? Can I get a second?
Second?
Thank you.
I could drop my laundry off, we could teach the kids how to fold laundry.
It is practical.
You know, if we teach the
Yeah.
kids to do that, like fold.
Yeah, I can do that too.
He's
Yeah.
becoming more Montessori after every GC. All right,
25
Phoebe,
cents a pound.
anything else, peanut gallery? Anybody else have anything on that? No? Okay, great, all in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. I'm gonna open it up and then we can discuss it. I motion to approve up to $1,500 for legal services / fees for upcoming lease negotiations. Funds to come from facility savings account. Can I get a second? Mary would second. Kathleen, Mary second. Can you speak to this a little bit further before we?
All right, just the background is, the MMCI attorney, this is the person we have used for, lease. We didn't use it for the MDM lease negotiation the last time, but we used him for CCM lease negotiations. And we've used him for other real estate issues. His name is Andrew DiPasquale. I've already forwarded, our lease and addendum to him to review. Well, he's waiting for final approval to go ahead and review that. He bills at $300 an hour. He estimates it would be about an hour of work for him to review our existing lease and addendum and make recommendations. Any additional negotiation, you know, he said he tries to bill very conservatively, and my experience with him has been that's true. We've never ended up paying him more than $1,000 or $1,200 or so for a particular job.
Okay, we're back.
The one who needs it.
Okay.
The
So,
one who needs it the least, right?
to summarize, Andrew is the attorney MMCI has used several times in the past. We've had a good experience with him. And he has no conflict in representing us in this issue. So our suggestion to, MMCI's suggestion to MVM is this is the guy you should use. And bills at $300 an hour, and we're not expecting this whole thing to be more than about $1,500. So, questions? Anything else I can tell you? Okay.
Okay, any other, I guess that's it. Are we ready to vote? Does everyone feel comfortable? All right, great. All in favor? Great. Thank you.
There's no point, 'cause you can't pay for it.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, I motion to approve Spirit Wear fundraiser as proposed by fundraising chair Tara Dunsmore. I'm just going to put in parentheses, there aren't any upfront expenses to vote on for that one at this time. Can I get a second?
Second.
Tori's first. She made eye contact with you first. Great. Does anybody have any questions on that for
How
Tara?
quickly can you hang the samples up? Because we don't have anything on our boards right now.
We don't have the samples yet. Melissa is waiting for them, and there was a little longer delay than we expected, but as soon as she gets them and we have them, which should be this week.
Okay,
So that's why the date says sometime in February. Basically, as soon as Melissa gets them, we'll put them on display. We'll leave them on display for a few days, then we'll open up the sale. So
Parents have been asking.
yeah.
That, I'm just curious, what is what's the markup?
Melissa's company does this for us at no markup. So
I mean, I'm saying, so we
at
get,
cost.
so whatever
Whatever
We get all profit.
Yeah, all the profit goes to the school.
Awesome.
But we
yeah, no, that's very nice, but I'm just curious, like, we double the price, or I'm just wondering how much flexibility we have. with
that I do not know. That would be a
It's
question
just
for
prices.
Melissa. I don't know what we've done in the past, so I really couldn't.
I would say traditionally, we don't make a large
Like
amount
a
of money.
t-shirt's $15.
Right.
So we get, how much of that are we bringing home? It seems like a really good way.
I think
to
it's
make-
like 20 to 30%.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's
cost.
that's
They're
what it
nice
is.
things, so. I
Yeah, and
can't
she
imagine-
keeps the
they don't
price
cost that much,
very
yeah.
low with the idea that Spiritwear is a fundraiser as a secondary thing. It's really more just, you know,
To have,
people's-
you want them
yeah,
all to have.
spirit,
And to
exactly.
make it
School
affordable for as many.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I won't
exactly.
suggest food trucks. But they're awfully nice.
And Melissa does a great job. We get a lot of really nice stuff, and she and I searched through catalogs and tried to like come up with, you know, some new ideas, and hopefully everybody will be happy with it.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Great, pass. Except for Jennifer. Okay, I motion to approve pizza and pinball fundraiser as proposed by fundraising chair Tara Dunsmore. And again, there are no upfront expenses to vote on at this time for this motion.
Yeah, second out.
Great. Does anybody
Sounds
have?
like a good time, thanks.
So for some reason, when I open your emails on my phone, these are blank.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's fine. I'm not
It's a-
connected to the internet on my computer, so I don't know what changes you made.
Okay. So
If
the
you
only
just wanna-
changes I made, spinners, I guess I put on there that they were gonna donate $2 from each admission. That was if we were going to do advanced sales, which we've decided we don't wanna do because that's a lot more work for us. So they haven't committed to an amount that they're donating. It's going to depend on how many people we can get there.
Okay.
But, so I just changed it to say a portion of the sales will be donated without specifying an amount. And then Papa John's, apparently they were super busy with the Super Bowl, and Pam is still trying to talk to the manager to get confirmation of whether they're donating 15% or 20% of the sales. So I changed that to say 15 to 20.
Got it. Okay.
That's it.
It's
It's
a
on-
pinball.
Yeah, where is
It's
it?
on East Street, right behind my house. It's fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, like literally
Same class.
right behind my
Papa
house.
John's.
Yeah, right by
Oh,
Papa
really?
John's and where the restore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right in front of my house.
Mhm.
Wow, really?
Yeah. There you go.
I'm digging that.
Yep, so everybody come to Spinners on President's Day, and
Spinners on President's
get
Day.
pizza from Papa John's. You can eat it at Spinners, or you can take it home, and they're gonna donate a percentage of the sales for school.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Yeah.
Unanimous.
Yay.
What is that say?
There is that all day?
I don't have the exact hours they're gonna be open that day. They're not normally open on Mondays, but they're going to open because it's a holiday,
Yeah,
because they're off
makes
of
sense.
school. So it'll probably be from like 1 to 5 or something along those lines. As soon as we get that info, we'll put it out on, we're gonna send a flyer.
And you
Great
just say
email.
you're there for MVM and you'll get.
I believe you have to have the flyer, so we'll
Okay.
send them home next week in Thursday folders, and we'll send them out by email so people can print them out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Orton Gillingham stipend. So I went back and I looked at the historical voting log, because it's really, really handy for going back and referring to things. And it looks like last year we approved, $500 from the MMCI MVM school fund to pay Danielle a stipend to implement the Orton Gillingham program. So I wanted to provide that historical information so that everyone is aware of what we have done in the past in something similar in nature, so that we can kind of go forward with a discussion about how much of a stipend we should be offering for the Orton Gillingham program this year.
What did the hiring committee say? Did they put in their proposal?
They didn't give a dollar amount.
They
They
didn't
said
give a dollar
20 to 25 hours worth of her pay. Right, and so I certainly, like, I don't want to discuss her hourly pay, so,
No.
right.
I can tell you though, that on the other stipends, that we, like, our leadership team gets 35 hours, they need monthly. So they usually end up making another $1,000 but I know that she appreciated the 500. And so I'm comfortable with that. If you all are, I think what she does is she collects all the data, she meets with them, she makes sure they have a space and they know what kids they're serving.
She coordinates, right?
She coordinates. She actually met with us with Jennifer when we spent that extra money we had. She came to that meeting also and helped with that. So, she's kind of the touchstone for teachers around Fort and Bellingham.
Great. Okay.
So do we have a motion?
I did not.
Just to counteract that, I'm sorry. We also paid Miss Peer last year for the Science Olympiad, $426 from PPA. So, that's not, it's different. It's a commitment also to kids and what's happening. But Danielle's is more working with teachers and being sure it's all good.
Does someone want to start a motion for that? Do you want to start a motion?
Tori does.
I don't know, what am I talking about?
Can I just ask, is the 500's good, 30 hours? Is that-
No, that's not 30 hours.
That's not
I'm
30
saying-
hours.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
We're
that's-
expecting 30 hours of work.
No, they
No,
said 20
20.
to 25.
That's what hiring said. Okay, 25 hours.
I mean, should we go into closed session
Is that
and talk
enough?
about
I
it?
think
it's enough to
Is
me.
that,
But I don't
is that
know.
20? Is that enough?
What do we,
Whatever, if she's happy, I don't know.
I don't know. Nancy, what do you think? Did you think 500 was good, or do you think it should be different?
I think there's been more to it this year with materials and setting it up, but,
So how many hours was it that it was approved for?
20.
No, there's,
No,
they're
they
suggesting
Suggesting,
20 to 25 hours.
and last year we approved $500.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
Just
privy
more
to,
like-
I don't know what her hourly rate is, but I would assume that
I don't want to talk about her hourly rate.
well, then we can't do a motion though if we can't like tell
Right,
you a
so
number.
I guess we can talk about it in closed session. then.
Yeah. that would be good.
I would say that you could approve if you want to say that she's going to receive 25 hours or whatever it is.
I don't want to do that because eventually it'll show up in the budget and then someone could derive that, so I'd rather just discuss it in closed session.
well, you could do
Because
that
we're going to
with any
closed
of the
session
stuff.
anyway.
Because of where it
Because the
is.
stipends have never been discussed in an hourly basis.
There's normally a number,
35 hours.
since I've been on here,
Oh, you
just
don't
a
see the
number,
It's
there's a
just a
number
set
has been
number.
given.
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Then why don't we do it in terms of an absolute number? Because eventually someone's gonna do the math if we're trying to. Yeah.
Right, I'm trying to protect privacy.
Yeah, exactly, so let's do a number instead of, okay, thank you
So
for
we
the
can,
guideline.
I mean, if we want, we can go in closed session and talk about it. And
we're going to close session anyway.
we're going into closed session anyway, so.
But we can't vote on it.
No, but we can come out of closed
I
session.
just wanna
and
make
vote
sure
on
everyone is aware, we're not
Yes.
gonna vote on it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I just want to see that because of where the money has to come from, it's clear who's getting the money and how much it is.
it. Right,
That's
Okay.
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if we vote on a certain out, yeah, anyway. Right.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting the hourly rate because if it's something that this person is going to do every year, then in my mind, you would want their compensation, which gets adjusted every year to kind of follow that.
Right, but
Mhm.
all the stipends we voted on that I've been on the GC for have never been tied to hourly rate.
Well, they have, you just haven't seen it. just
I
haven't
think
been-
Nancy
Yeah.
has done the
Okay.
math and come
Okay.
to us with a number.
Okay, so then, did you do the math so you can give us a number? Oh,
I didn't
okay.
know what we were gonna, I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know you. We'll talk about it.
Okay, we'll talk about it in closed session, no big
Okay.
deal. NBD. All right. All right, so now we're on to the discussion about the hiring committee staffing recommendations. Did everyone have a chance to read the staffing recommendations? Did everyone have a chance to read the budget stuff?
I just want to share with everyone that about 3 years ago, FCPS did major cuts because of their budget. And I think it was 4 years ago. And they cut positions, they increased class size, and I went, oh my goodness, here we go. We're gonna lose money in this one. I was really sure we were. And that year we got our 1 or 2% increase. So I don't know what I'm saying, except I'm not sure it always links with what's happening with their budget. I'm just not sure. And I also wonder, I don't know if the governor's gonna get this stuff passed, you know, because he really spent a lot of time talking about charters. But I wonder if he does, I think I asked this the other night, does that mean that takes the place of some of the money that FCPS might give us with a 1% increase or something? Do you see what I'm saying? Because they kind of did that with the transportation.
They did that with the
line.
Yeah, they sure did.
So, I don't know that he's gonna get it passed, but.
Well, if you want my opinion, I'll know more after the lobby night on the 19th, because I'll be able to talk to the authors of the bill. But my experience has been with working on legislation at the state level, that it's a multi-year process. So generally, when a bill is introduced, and we saw this with Maryland's bill last year with the Montessori teaching certification thing, it didn't even make it out of committee. Facilities plan was introduced last year as well, funding plan, didn't make it out of committee. This year, they're coming back on the Montessori teaching stuff, so they may have more of a chance. This year, facility funding is coming back, so maybe it'll have more of a chance. But in my experience, it generally takes 2 to 4 years to see anything pass at the state level. So chances that we'll get something for this coming year are pretty darn slim. So that's.
But we have in our teacher's lounge, we have something that went up that said, he would, when they passed the help me out gambling money, education was supposed to get all of it.
Right.
And then Hogan kept out $3 billion to do with what, you know, because he's the governor. And so a lot of what the union is talking about with the teachers is it'd be nice if he'd give us that back, us teachers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be nice.
It would be nice. And
But-
they did go down in March. They had a day that they were all gonna meet down at this, in Annapolis.
Yeah. But that's actually another unknown for us. I mean, I know that this whole, you know, salaries and benefits are in negotiation now, and we don't know what's gonna happen with them. And that directly affects our budget as well.
Right.
So it's just important that we keep that in mind, so. God, I wish I had some good news. So sorry. The other thing to keep in mind is we're talking at the Board of Trustees level about the pre-K grant, you know, because it did kind of resurrect itself from the ashes, but in a form that is impossible for us to use for the next year. Because they're actually offering a very nice amount for each child. It's $10,000 for each child, but it's only for full-time pre-K 4s. So we don't have a full-time program, and we're not in a place where we can gear up to have a full-time program by next fall. I mean, I suppose if we dropped everything else and we upset the staff terribly, we might be able to do this. But so what MMCI is talking about is, first of all, we've lodged a criticism of this, and MDSE is MSDE. Anyway, has been hearing from a lot of schools about how in the heck are we supposed to do this? We don't have a full-time force program. We can't use, I mean, there's no way we can do this. So there's a small chance that they may back off this year, but I also haven't heard anything that's terribly encouraging about that. It's just been kind of this little well, we need to keep an eye on this because maybe they'll get so many complaints that they'll change the way the program is structured. But that's a hope and a prayer, so we can't really depend on
Is
that.
it federal money or is it state money?
It is, originates as federal money, but it's funneled through the states, and the states are allowed to design how that money is distributed. So that's why they tried it with that's why we got the 3s and 4s, was because they were trying it in that format. And I believe they felt like the money was better spent concentrating on the PK4 level. I don't know what they were thinking, but what I think happened.
There are very few full-time pre-K4s. So
Well, I think what they're trying to do is encourage.
Make them have,
They're
get
trying
ready
to
for when
make
the
that
state
happen.
requires that.
Yeah, they're trying to make people go to full-time pre-K4. And this is kind of an incentive to do that. The only problem is it came out so late. I mean, the RFP just came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there's, if you didn't already have that program in place, or were going to that program for next fall already, you can't do it. I mean, we have to have extra space, we have to hire extra staff. I mean, there's so many hurdles to clear, we just can't really do that. So that's, would be potentially a lot of money. It would be $80,000 or $90,000, maybe more per school, but we can't get it at this point. So.
Well, there are huge restrictions in the full day program too. I mean, you have to have a sleeping area, you have to have food prep, it's just toileting.
Yeah, so our facility really couldn't handle it. I mean, I think CCM is more, it's be more possible for them to do it, but they're also not even gonna try at this point, so.
We also may have families who, I mean, I know personally, it depends on each family's needs, but some families may not. I mean, not all kids are ready for full day when they're 4.
Sure. So, well, that actually is where the state is going. They are looking very strongly at making pre-K4 a mandatory full-day program. So.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I remember when the school first opened and kindergarten wasn't full day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When we first opened a school over Wonderbook Warehouse, it was a half-day kindergarten program.
In Virginia, and some counties in Virginia, it's still.
I think a lot of working
more
parents like
appropriate,
full-time
Yeah.
pre-K though.
But really, the bottom line of that discussion is we don't have that money anymore, and it's not coming back anytime soon.
Right.
So that's the more good news for you.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the hiring committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's all part of it, right?
Right, but specifically,
Right.
what we're gonna do.
Well, nobody seems to want to say this, so I'll be the bad guy here. I think Marissa's suggestion was, if I can find it.
Well, let's outline what hiring committee
All right.
is suggesting,
Oh, sure.
right?
Okay, go right ahead.
So our hiring committee is recommending that we hire a full-time assistant principal. They are recommending that we increase the counselor position from a 0.6 to a 1.0. They're recommending a stipend for Orton Gillingham. I think those are the 3 things. Yeah. And then the other thing to bring up is that our math intervention specialist, I think, is going from a 0.3 to a 0.4.
Back to what you.
Correct?
Yes,
Right,
Marissa brought that up.
right. I mean, it's all like hiring and staffing and budgeting and moneying.
It would be great. I just don't see how that's gonna work.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, and as part of, I'm not speaking for you, Marissa, but as part of Marissa's narrative, I'll just read it. She says, unfortunately, based upon all of the items above that are out of our control compared to those that are in our control, I suggest that the GC consider closing the AP position currently open and does not consider any increased adjustments to existing staff or adding new positions until a long-term facility plan is in place, i.e. a long-term lease or a mortgage payment, and the annual operating budget can be shown to support the increase.
sounds wise.
I agree.
And the exception is the math intervention position, which was budgeted previously to be a 0.4, so
That money's already there.
that, but yeah, it's already in the budget. It was a temporary decrease for this year. Right, Nancy? Is that right?
Yeah, just this year.
Yep.
Thank you, question. So, the plan then would be to keep keeping to the are we going to do anything about getting administrative support for the principal? Because right now we have a 0.35, right? We're not gonna have that for long, we're not gonna have that going into a new year. So we will have no support. A year ago, we were all about needing this, we're going to implode without this, we can't function without this.
Right, we talked
So
about a
do
0.5
we have-
at that time.
You're right, do we have any, are we going to change this to considering the 0.5, or are we just gonna say that we don't need that now? But what do we do with that? It was dire straits before,
I
and
don't
now
think
it's
it's a
like.
question of not needing it.
Right,
Definitely.
It's a
Yeah.
question of the budget,
right.
and it's not sustainable, and it's, you know, if we were to put on, well, yeah, you should be.
I guess what I wanna say is
Yeah.
that I certainly don't want to make any decisions that would put us in a financially precarious position that would A, cause our school to be closed, or B, put us in a position where we have to decide what programs we're cutting for our school. Because that has happened at our school before, and it's heart-wrenching, absolutely heart-wrenching, and I, for one, as a member of the GC, don't ever want to be put in a position where I have to decide what we're cutting.
Do we have the?
I mean, when I read this budget, that's what I think.
manpower to survive with however this is getting filled now. I'm going back to remembering statements before about how much everyone's being pushed to the limit to cover certain roles, testing other roles, I don't know, discipline, whatever the special roles only administrators can do in certain discipline situations or crisis, whatever that is. I realize something has to give, is pushing the people who will fill those roles to their limit and beyond going to be worth something, that there is a cost to everything.
Right, yeah.
Those other
There's a
programs that we all
cost-benefit
love,
analysis, for sure.
is that what it is? I don't know, it just seemed very dire before, and now that nobody who's necessarily directly involved in that is not here to speak, it's not, now we're like, oh, and I understand the budget, it's the money's been spent one way or the other, but it was such a, I didn't think it was a big deal before, y'all convinced me it was a big deal, and now we're saying, but it's not a big enough deal that we are gonna make, we don't wanna make another nebulous cut. What is the other thing we would cut to
Well,
fund?
I think
some of
the
these
budget is
positions.
a bigger deal.
I
So
think,
you say we don't wanna make
I
cuts.
think if we ever committed, the thing that we would cut would be middle school Spanish. I mean, I think that would be the program that's the least necessary.
Can I ask Marissa, as you projected this budget, did you keep that full-time AP in, because it was in the budget at the beginning of the year? Do you still have it in there?
I do still have it in there right now, but
Have you taken it out to do these numbers?
I have not taken it out to do the numbers. What I did was I increased our annual rent to the $325,000 that it's going to be.
But you took out the AP.
No, the AP, right now I still have the AP in there because you guys haven't told me to take it out, and that's why we're seeing red.
How much red are we seeing?
It comes like a
Right
year or two?
next year, we were looking at a $25,000 deficit, which kind of tied into the pre-K grant coming in. Well, we've had more people increasing or changing and electing benefits and things of that nature. So right now I'm looking at a $48,000 deficit for next year that we've got to cover. And that's before we even get into the $325,000.
That's a 70 grand increase
But that's
right there.
with the AP position still in
Yes,
there, which
yes.
is how much?
100,000.
Yeah. So that's.
So that's where
That's okay.
taking the
That's full-time
AP position out, full-time AP position out.
Right.
Makes us back in the black, but we are in a year-to-year lease, and that's not wise.
Right. And the other part of that is we don't learn our budget until, what, the end of July?
But you know,
When did we
another,
hear?
another way to look at this is, let's say, everything goes our way. Okay, let's say salaries and benefits are fairly stable, not good for the staff, but let's say it's good for the budget, right? Let's say that we negotiate a better rent deal than we anticipate. Let's say we get a PPA increase. Let's say, miraculously we get a grant of some kind, but we won't know those things until July. So the point I'm gonna make is we can come back and revisit this
Right.
issue in July.
When you have no
When we
information.
have that information.
When you have no one to choose from.
Right.
Again,
That's
so
what happened this year.
Well,
I'm just telling you, and I'm only speaking because I'm the only staff rep here, and so I have to speak because I have heard extensive feedback from staff
okay.
that they are very, very concerned about going into another school year without enough administrative support. And, you can do what you want, it's your choice, but I'm telling you, and this is what I keep saying on behalf of the staff, is
Right.
that if you don't have happy, supported teachers that have enough people who are, leading the school appropriately, because Nancy can only do what she can do, or whoever, it's just, staff does not feel supported sufficiently administratively, and you will see people leave as a result of not having that support.
And it's such a difficult thing because, it's balancing like a budget and worrying about having to not have a school. Like, I want to make sure we have job security for all the staff that we have. And that's why budget is such an important thing. I'm sorry, Regina.
No, that's okay. So if staff needs administrative support and we can't continue with where we are today and all the things that we're paying for, what could staff do without?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, because this goes back to what we kind of talked about in the work session, which is, building costs and planning for a future building versus personnel staff, personnel cost. And I mean, if we're holding back on our staffing as a result of the building, I mean.
Oh, no, we're not. No. When you look at the Excel spreadsheet that we have here, we're not holding back, it's right here. We're not holding back on staff. The reason why we go from, it's not here. The reason why we go from being in the black, or from getting out of the red, is because our facilities rent or mortgage, when we have a mortgage, then it's stable.
Yeah,
it
no, I
stabilizes.
understand all of that,
So-
but I just felt like,
So buying a building is actually a more conservative.
yes, because it's
Right.
stable.
Right.
Yes, I understand that, but haven't we had conversations before about how we were coming down to these tough choices and that building was a piece of that?
Yeah.
Well, the
I mean, I know we
problem
have,
is-
We have,
I didn't
unless I
invent that.
misunderstood what we were talking about, we have.
Yeah, no, that's been,
Yes.
that has been the discussion, yes, it has, I
Yeah.
agree with Regina. Yeah.
That's why we started
has
the
been a
2020
discussion, but-
vision, because this isn't doable long-term. This
Right.
Building, that's
That's
why we
why
have
we
We
to.
have to leave here.
We
Yeah,
have
we
to,
have
we
to
have
do
to
it.
either buy it
Yeah.
or buy something else, because if we are perpetually renting, we will perpetually becoming, increasing our debt load when rent goes up.
Not to mention the inadequacies of the facility
Yeah.
to begin with.
Right, well, the fact that we can't make
Right.
it
The
more adequate.
specific was it 70,000 some odd increase that we're gonna get from going to a year
$70,000.
annual, yeah. Not that I'm saying we want another 5-year lease, but that, I'm just saying, at all, but I'm saying the 75,000 is the cost, part of that is the cost of having a yearly lease and not a
Yeah.
5-year lease,
No.
right?
No.
Mm-mm.
That's the new
No.
lease price for this place.
No, the
matter what.
estimated
That's
lease price, because we don't
estimated.
have a real one.
Because
We-
if
That is the
we
real
had
lease price.
taken the
That's what
5-year
the contract
renewal,
It's the
If we
contract.
renew-
If we renew.
if we had
Yeah.
taken
For
the
a five-
5-year renewal, we would be locked into market rent as determined by his real estate professional. So we could not do that.
Right.
Also, we don't want a 5-year agreement. So,
We don't know what the 5-year rent would have even been.
no, well.
But typically when you
I
go
can
year to
tell
year,
what
you
approximately
pay
what it
more,
would have
right?
been.
Right.
That's the convenience you pay for. So this annual
Right,
75,000 was.
Kathleen
nuts.
looked into what current market rent is for places in this area. You wanna elaborate?
Well, given the condition of this building and the restriction on uses, I mean, it's really appropriate for a school or a church, okay? So that limits the tenant pool that would be available. Market rates would be around $11 to $12 a square foot for this building. We're currently paying about $8.50 a square foot. So if you
It's about
just
25%.
just take $11, we have 32,000 square feet. I think that takes us to about 330,000 a year. So I think that's 352. Ooh, that's even worse.
Which is the annual, so his annual rate
Yes,
is
it's
the
about
same
the
as
same.
his, probably what we're
Well,
predicting
actually, the
his.
month-to-month rate is less than that. It would be about 325 for the month-to-month rate.
And just as a point of reference,
I'm
can you
sure.
speak to how much CCM is paying per square foot?
CCM is paying about $14 a square foot. And they're considering another 10,000 square foot expansion. And again, don't everybody scream. When we went over this at the staff meeting, they just have more money than we do. I mean, in a few years, they're going to be making the same hard choices that we're making. But right now, they're not quite there
Their
yet.
teachers are not as.
Yeah.
Their teachers
So-
are younger, they have fewer staff, and they get more PPA than us.
But we're gonna ask for more PPA.
We are gonna ask for more
Absolutely.
PPA, but
Okay.
not 18 more PPA, only 5.
Almost 5.
If we want more than that, we need a new building.
Right.
So,
And we're projecting with the mortgage that we would like to be able to get, that we think that we can afford, that we're hoping for, that our monthly rent will be, or our monthly mortgage will be. What does that come to? I know you said it, I know I've got it in
Yeah,
my head
it-
somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
Marissa might know.
Marissa's.
The monthly rent is going, if the mortgage goes through as we have agreed, that we can live with, our most recent version of the mortgage that we would like to get.
You mean the 4.5 million mortgage?
If that's the one,
Okay.
yeah. Our monthly payments are gonna be with everything together.
The mortgage is 300,000.
So no matter which way we're we're looking at a significant increase in facilities costs. Even the best scenario, we're looking at an increase.
And then the surplus that we have, which I believe is what, like $300,000, right? That there's no way to utilize any of that money with enough time to make up for it, like if we moved in the meantime.
Right now, I'll say, as we go to prepare the FY20 budget in July, we're going to be looking at all of these factors and considering if we need to pull a chunk of our rent or mortgage or whatever, what rent out of the facility savings account.
I just want to be clear that we do have the money. It's just not
Yeah,
sustainable.
yeah, and I guess here's my thing is, okay, take yourself to your individual world, and you've been saving up to buy a house, and you're almost there, but then your car breaks down, and you got to figure out what do you do, and
I cry.
you spend a lot of
But you lose your
time-
job if you can't drive to work.
I
So
get
if the house is a moot point. Yeah, so
Right,
you
but-
got all those things factored in, but you need a house to live in.
But also, I mean, when you take into consideration, I mean, because I come from the finance world, one of the things that we look at when we're looking at borrowers and their savings and spending habits and all of that, what makes a stronger buyer from a mortgage lending standpoint is someone who has 6 months reserves.
But don't we have some security with the more?
We don't even come close to having 6 months reserves.
So don't we, we already have the more, I mean, didn't we already have all these special no down?
And I'm not talking,
First of all,
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, I'm not talking about from a securing a mortgage perspective. Because the retail financing that I worked in is very different from commercial financing, right? So I'm not talking about the rules of lending for commercial financing. But what I am talking about is best practices and making sure that we do have savings. And if we spend it, then when the car does break down, then we have nothing.
Yeah, I think.
Could be.
Or
What,
well, no,
what
what I,
happens if we get an AP and it's sustainable for 1 or 2 years and then we have to make cuts? We're either cutting a teacher or we're cutting
what
an,
point
or
will
we're
we-
cutting an
yeah.
AP position that we just gave somebody. That's not fair either. I don't know
We're
what the
talking
right
about
answer
people's
is.
careers.
I just want to be clear that I'm going on record as saying that every single staff who completed a form on the strategic plan for their hopes and dreams for this school, that it was their number one priority to have a part-time or a full-time AP.
Right. And I
So-
want one too.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, and when people are pushed up against a wall and feel like they need extra support and they're not getting what they need, and then you have to be prepared to lose those people. And I'm just telling you that replacing Montessori teachers is really challenging.
I know.
So if you make a choice to ignore the hiring committee recommendations and the recommendations of the staff, then you do that at the risk of losing your people. I just want to be clear.
And I want to go on the record as saying, Monica, I'm not ignoring anybody.
No, I
I'm
don't mean
really
you
not.
personally, I mean the GC. If the
I
GC
don't-
chooses to
I
not.
think, well,
follow
ignore is not
that-
the word you mean. I mean, if that's not the way that the decision
So it's
goes.
just.
It's not, ignore is not the word.
It's
what
a
you
tough
mean. Nobody's
choice.
ignoring.
Yeah, it's a tough choice because I want to make sure everyone in this building has job security.
there's another thing I would bring to the forefront, and actually Nancy could speak to this as well, is in DC this year, there are 5 charter schools that have just lost their charter because they went into deficit. So, now, hang on.
I can speak to that,
Yeah.
I know one of them.
Yeah. Well, I know, there may be mismanagement, I know all this stuff is true. But what I'm saying is, that we don't ever want to be in a situation where we have to be in the red. And I would also point out that $300,000, that sounds like a lot of money, it is not. And I will tell you, if we are successful in buying a building, which would be the best thing for the survival of the school long-term, most of the costs can be financed, but not all of them can. For instance, the legal fees can't be financed, and they're going to be about $175,000. We're also going to need money for furnishings and other things, and moving costs, things that we can't roll into the cost of acquiring a facility. So I want to go back to Melissa's, what do you do in a situation like that? Do you go for the long-term health of the organization, or do you put a bandage on right here?
Or
And
fundraise,
there you go.
Or
That'd
charge
be good
for
too.
big money.
Yeah, big money, that would be good.
Introduce that. I mean, that was a huge problem, was losing that pre-K grant.
Yeah,
And so
we got
we-
$40,000 this year for the
Yeah.
pre-K grant. Last year we had 25,000. But I mean, that's a lot of money to lose out on. And I hustled the preschool parking lot to get a lot of I think I hustled 12 grand out of the 40 that we got because we were trying to follow up on getting more stuff. So, I mean, it takes a lot. There's a lot of hustling.
So providing that unsubsidized program is a challenge for us. That's really been, so maybe that's been a challenge that we can't, sounds like we can't sustain.
Can I just add some good news?
Sure.
Yeah,
Please.
please do.
There is a website called Niche, Niche, and they list the top Montessori public schools in the country. And our school is the only one they list for Maryland.
Wow. Okay. Anything else on that discussion from here?
I just feel awful.
I feel
We're
awful
not
too.
So we've decided we're not gonna, I mean,
Well,
what have we decided?
I'm
I
trying to
don't know.
stir up more discussion.
Well, okay, so I'm just trying to think back to the work session and things that were discussed. While I get that I'm saying I don't believe that we can support a full-time AP position, I know there was also discussion of increasing the guidance counselor position. And so I'm wondering, while I know that, I guess, would that help us in any way? I know that we can't make a commitment today because of money, we just, I don't feel comfortable doing it. You guys can, it's up to you. But like in July or whatever, can we not increase that to the 1.0? And that would not provide us with any type of additional support?
That way we have more information at that time.
Does that provide us the support we need?
You know what?
I don't know.
I don't know if it
I
might, it
don't
might not
know.
provide the exact support that you need, but I'd say at this point, any support is better than no
If
support.
they can't do testing,
Well,
maybe it is.
yeah, they don't do,
If they
the
can't, maybe
counselor
it's not.
doesn't do anything that an AP does.
So maybe it isn't.
Right.
So, and I will say that, and I feel that our counselor at this level is doing a good job doing other things that haven't been done before. So I think we have to ask the staff, but I feel like it's positive. So if we can't, I'm not sure if you ask them, what would you rather have?
Well,
I don't know.
And I think at this point, maybe it's, what can we afford? And, like to offer more support within the building. And maybe we need to just, maybe the suggestion is to revisit that, increasing that position in the summer when we have a better handle of exactly what our finances are looking
Yeah,
like.
I'd wait. And the
The
other part of that is
Counselor.
when you have a principal and you don't have an AP, every time that principal goes to the multiple meetings that she or he goes to, you pay someone to be your acting principal. So there's more to the cost of this than just what you pay a salary.
And I think it's also important to say that if there is no administrative support next year here, and other than the principal, that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's unprecedented, at least in recent years. I mean, this year at least.
This year.
No, because at least.
Well,
But yeah, but what I'm saying is, other than, I mean, that you've always had some support,
At least they have.
at least a half-time. So we would be
We only
putting,
had 1 year of a full-time.
right, but what I'm
Okay.
saying though is that what we're talking about now is offering zero support to the single principal, which is unprecedented as far as I know in recent years. So that's just to have that awareness, I think is important.
point of reference.
Yes.
Right.
Does help that we have a great principal.
It does help that we have a great principal.
And I
The
admit
good
that
back.
sincerely. Yeah. The good back, right, exactly.
Does anybody else have anything they want to add to the discussion?
Good discussion.
It's a tough one.
Good thing we
It's
don't
a
have to
hard
vote,
discussion.
right? Good thing we don't have to vote right now.
Well, and it's not a permanent conundrum either. This too shall pass, and
Right.
we will end up in a position where we have more fiscal stability in a new facility or
Right.
with a more fixed
Increased
cost. We know
PPA
that.
or-
I mean, as unfortunate it is, it's hopefully something that we can get through. And it just seems like from a risk benefit ratio, on one hand, I completely hear you, Monica, you said that you risk losing teachers, and that's tragic. And on the other hand, you risk losing, at the worst, the school, and in between, a new facility, and that's, it's an unconscionable position to have to be in, but I think you have to look at it in terms of the benefit of the greater whole. If we lose the school, there are no teachers.
There are no jobs.
Yeah, there are no jobs, and
You mean because we can't pay our rent?
yeah,
What
or
do you mean lose the,
or
you mean
if
lose
if
the
we
physical
risk our
school,
charter because
or
of debt, or if we risk the whole, the whole cabal, then
is that really how, I mean, is that, you're saying two very dramatic scenarios, are they really comparable? Is that really where we're at?
Yeah,
Seems
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it seems like what we're,
absolutely.
from what I'm hearing.
Or if we would lose other programs. Potentially. That
We're
would be
at risk
another
for
option.
programs.
Spanish, yeah.
We're also at risk for like not having a school anymore if we're not fiscally
If we
responsible.
can't make these tough decisions,
Right.
fiscally
Right, I'm saying
responsible.
if we opt for $100,000 position, then three
Then we're in the
$33,000 positions
Next
would have to
year,
go.
we'd have to eliminate.
We're in the
a
red.
position.
Mhm.
We'd have to
Which is-
let someone go next year.
And I think part of it is just the unknowns. Are we gonna have this $70,000 additional nut that we have to crack? And if we have to go to a year, I mean, maybe we'll come back in 2 months and maybe we'll come back in 2 months and we'll have worked something with the landlord where we've negotiated a better deal. And that's completely possible. And then this is a whole different question.
Right, then it's a whole different discussion.
The pool, well, I think the selection pool, so it would seem to me that it would be an annual question to get, because we did last year, we faced that problem with having a pool at the end of the season that did not suit our needs.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that would, if this is the time of year to have this discussion to make this decision. Sounds like we don't really have a pool.
And that's unfortunate because we have to work with what we have then. So like as it stands
And
now.
to be honest, I would like to remind people that in the discussion last year, one of the things we talked about, and we all knew that if we approved the AP, it was not sustainable long-term. We all knew that.
Well, then why
So-
would that be?
It was a bad decision. I'm sorry, it just was.
It was approved because it was said we had to have
We
it.
felt panicky.
Who said we had to have it?
Everybody, this whole GC sat here and argued, we have to have it. I could go back and find minutes, I am sure.
But now we don't,
Well,
I'm saying, yeah, but now we don't.
And
have
I
to.
remember sitting here when we
That's right, I
approved
agree
it,
with you.
saying, and
I remember
and
being-
we are all
I
aware
remember
that this
being
is
in
a
Maine on a hotel
stopgap for
lobby
this
having
year.
this conversation because it was so critical, because I was on vacation in Bar Harbor, having the conversation how much we needed an AP.
I
And now we don't.
But I also remember-
I couldn't fit in.
But the day,
Right.
the day we approved it, we also had the conversation that this was for this year only, and there were no promises that this would go forward because we probably can't afford it. I remember that specifically because I wanted to make sure that we all understood that.
Right.
It was
We need
not
an
had
AP,
it.
that's not a
And I don't think
question.
anyone's saying that we don't need
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
We
we
do
to-
need it.
yeah.
It's just, it's, sometimes you need back surgery and you need a kidney, you're only gonna get one. Like, the kidney doesn't get right. But the realities are, you may need 2 things, but you take the one that's gonna allow you to live the fight again another day and hopefully come back from that. And that's, I mean, it's a horrible situation for all of us to be in. I think we all feel the weight of that.
Well, maybe being solutions focused, we really do need to spend more of our time talking about how to get outside funding. Because obviously what the county is giving us is not enough for our needs. So I don't have any instantaneous answer for that. But maybe we really have to be serious about establishing a subcommittee where their principal and only focus is grant writing.
Six funds, yeah, right.
And those of us with writing talent, not me, need to come forward. And we do have people, at least at the MMCI level, who have experience with grant writing. So maybe take advantage of that resource.
And maybe parlay our recognition
Our
of
5
being,
stars.
of our recognition, like of being, maybe we can parlay that into more funds. I also just want to say this real quick as it ties into this. And one of the benefits of being a friend of Ed is that I haven't been around as long and I have kids here. And so I think I really do have maybe a different view and things like that. But I think, Kathleen, you kind of had talked about floating this out in a Survey Monkey. It seems to me that one of the issues that we are collectively dealing with is the whole issue between downtown and not downtown. And I hate to say that as someone who lives downtown, I really love downtown, but it is ungodly expensive. And a lot of the decisions that we're talking about here would be looked at very differently if we weren't similarly just looking for a facility in this downtown area. And I get that goes against a lot of grain and things like that, but I really do feel like that's at least something that needs to be considered because these issues are going to keep going on and on. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I know some parents are going to be very strongly about it, but the ability to do that changes this equation, not just a little bit, but it changes it dramatically. And you wouldn't have to be in this position for as long while we're continuing to look because that would open up the available properties, it would save us a lot of money. It would really
Well,
change things.
No.
Well, it could.
It's
I think
a
it
lot
could-
of money.
Well, okay,
I mean, what we're
you
talking
would get more
about,
for your money, maybe, is that
The
fair?
warehouse-
Yeah.
Yes.
the warehouse space I was talking about starts at $6 to $8 a square foot. And what that gets you is a cold, dark shell. So what you have to do then is do a build out of the interior to make it usable. So there's an extra cost associated with that. Obviously, sometimes you can get the landlord to pay a portion of that. You know, that would all be a matter of negotiation, but it would then
They
be
do that a
finding a
lot in
space.
But it would,
Yeah.
it would certainly save money in the sense that it would be something that you'd be able to move forward with more quickly as opposed to having another 2 or 3 year delay while you wait for something else to unfold, which is that is a substantial amount of money. at that point,
Absolutely,
Right,
and,
so.
yeah, and then we would, and just so that everybody realizes, I mean, I'm not saying this is bad or not bad, but it does tie into the full facilities question. If you look at what CCM is doing, they've spent close to $1 million on their build out. So they're really kind of tied into their location. They actually would like to move as well for a variety of reasons. But they don't feel like walking away from that build out. So now what they're really focusing on is expanding in the same space.
Because they have sunk costs.
Because they have
right,
sunk
right.
costs
And for
that
paying
they
for
want to
them.
try and recover. So you gotta remember that's where we would be if we, and I'm not saying it's bad, maybe this is the solution. Maybe we find a big old ugly warehouse and
Right.
and we make the inside as beautiful as possible and we, you know, make it something that we can afford and that's where we are for the next 10 to 15 years. But I think
Certainly
that's
something that should at
really,
least be on
Can
the
I send
table.
you some pictures of someone who did that in Denver? And it
Sure.
was just right over by Walmart, this big old huge thing, and I'll send you the inside pictures.
That sounds great.
It'd be interesting. just-
Right.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
interest of time, does
Yeah,
anybody
let's
have
keep
anything else, or should we move into closed session?
Let's do that.
I mean, does it, I mean,
I'm good.
because it's almost 10 o'clock and
Get water first.
I don't want anyone to turn into a pumpkin. All right, so I motion that we go into closed session. Thank you all. Good night.
Done.
Thanks, everybody.